meeting. We will
Recording in progress.
now be official because we're recording it and the little red light's on, so we can now hear everything you say. So I have on my left Councilmember Walsh, on my right Councilmember Tran. I always screw it up.
That's correct.
I did it good. And Councilmember Honda. Yeah, like the car. It's Red Hat Honda. Anyway, thank you all for being here, and we'll call, the meeting's been called to order. The first order of business is public comment, and I have one pink sheet for one person that would like to speak, and that's Mike Bolich Ziegler. And you can come to the front, and you have 3 minutes. The green light will come on, and we're here to listen to what you have to say, so thank you for coming in.
Thank you. My name is Mike Bolich Ziegler. I live in Twin Lakes, and I was wanting to comment on two things on the agenda. One is the Festival Street measure. I wanted to share, I think it's a great idea. I think it's good to have these spaces closed down for pedestrians to be able to be safe, enjoy the space, not to worry about cars. I would encourage the council to consider expanding it. There are cases where folks may want to have like a block party. I'm thinking back to Halloween. I was in Twin Lakes with my kids, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. Clearly, some neighbors are really invested in Halloween. Maybe they want to get together and have that block shut down for cars, makes it safer for kids. The way it's written now, it seems like it's just through mayoral proclamation, which is a bit restricting. So I'd like to just push a little bit further, Seattle does something similar. Second thing I wanted to comment on was the 21st Street repaving. I live just west of 21st. I cross that street to get to the bus, to get to the transit center. I realize asphalt's expensive, but $3 million is a lot. That's 30 years worth of NTS funding, which I know was a topic last year, or last meeting, I'm sorry. Or maybe not 30 years. I don't know if my math's right there. I'm not sure what the improvements are other than just repaving that street. I'd be curious to hear if there are improvements being considered versus just paving over that street. It is built like a drag strip. A lot of people treat it like a drag strip. There's really not many design inhibitors that keep people from speeding. It's got some pretty serious accidents over the last year. There's been a fatality. There's been a few serious accidents. I think outside of 320th and Pack Highway, it's probably an area that has the most incidents of, collision and injury. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that's a street that will have a higher use of Metro's bus that will go to the transit center. I think they're going to 15-minute headways. So I think the city would be interested in having more people use that bus to get to our great new light rail station once it's opening. So I'd be curious to hear what improvements may be able to be made on that street given this project. I know it's not always the same, safety and then repaving. But that's a lot of money. There's a lot of ways I think to improve it with that. So I'd be curious to hear if there's anything else to be shared on that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment anyone would like to come forward with? Okay. We'll now go to committee business. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up before we go to our agenda? Okay, let's go to item A, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Chair Rovi, I move approval of minutes for October 6, 2025.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, now we'll go to item B, authorized design advancement and bidding of the 21st Avenue Southwest Preservation Project, Southwest 320th to Southwest 339th Street, 85% status update. Oh, there we go. Is it Kinloch?
Yes, Kinloch, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. Chair Dovey, committee members, council members, and others. My name is Charsky Kinloch, and I'm one of the civil engineers here at the city. And tonight, I'm presenting regarding an 85% design status report for the 21st Avenue Southwest Preservation Project, and I'm also seeking authorization to bid from committee. And so I'm asking, should the city council authorize staff and to complete design and bid the 21st Avenue Southwest Preservation Project and return to LUTC and council for bid award, further reports, and authorization. This project is mainly aimed at providing pavement repair and overlay between Southwest 339th Street, as seen at the bottom of the vicinity map, and Southwest 320th Street. We're also looking to do some ADA ramp improvements, and the overlay is a 2.5-inch HMA overlay. And we're also updating curb ramps and pedestrian push buttons to meet current ADA standards. So, to look at our project finances, we've gotten estimated expenditures matching our available funding for the project at $3.09 million, including $90,000 for in-house design, $2.45 million for an estimated construction costs, $245,000 for a 10% construction contingency during the project, and $305,000 for construction management, inspection, and administration. The available funding for the project comes down to two sources. $2.59 million comes from an NHS asset management grant, and the other $500,000 comes from the 102 or the overlay fund. The options presented to the committees are to authorize staff to complete the design and bid the 21st Avenue Southwest Preservation Project and return to the LUTC and council for bid award, further reports, and authorization, or option 2, do not authorize staff to proceed with this project and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the November 18th City Council consent agenda for approval. Any questions from the committee?
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds like that the gentleman who had the public comment, that you kind of answered some of his
Yeah.
questions just now, that there will be some additional things with
Yes, yep.
ADA accessibility.
As on top of the overlay, we're providing curb ramp upgrades, upgrading to our newest ADA standards for a lot of these curb ramps inside our construction limits, improving access for all our pedestrians in the area to these potential metro stations or this metro access that he had mentioned.
Okay, all right.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. My understanding is anytime you overlay a road, that you have to upgrade the ADA stuff. So, as the gentleman was saying, you know, people do drive pretty fast on that road, but you're going to keep it the way it is, just overlay it and not.
Yes, yeah, our current intent is to keep it mostly the same with some extruded curb in certain places where we do have it for turn lanes and this and that to keep people from making those dangerous left turns out.
Is there anything you can do to stop people from racing up and down that road? Can you make it more difficult for them?
Yes, absolutely.
So the grant we have for this project is a preservation grant that we have, and so it is limited to the preservation of the asphalt pavement.
Okay.
So if we were to do anything else, we would have to find additional funding sources.
So one of the questions I'm going to be asking this, from now on is, if we don't, so part of this funding comes from the 501,
Maybe you can go back a slide where you
Sure,
had the
yes.
numbers
because it's not on here.
and move the picture so
Yep,
it
yep.
goes, so we can actually see it. There you go.
So the 500,000, so if we, in an attempt to watch the city's budget, if we, need that $500,000 for maybe something else, could it be used for something else, or would we lose the grant if we don't do this project this year?
Yes, those are matching funds for the grant.
So if we don't use it this year, then we'll lose a grant?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on
Sure.
the 500,000. Later in the agenda, you have a place where you're taking 500,000 out for another project. Is this the same 500,000?
Yes.
So following up on Councilmember Honda's question, where 500,000 has been taken out of another project, which you'll be talking to us about later, and moved to here, then that project, or those overlays, some of those are going to be on the cutting block, correct? Unless more money comes in?
So the funding source we're taking from is our 102 fund, which is our overlay fund.
Yes.
And so anytime we have these preservation projects, preservation and overlay basically mean the same thing. So with that bucket of funds we have in the 102 funds, it's for funding our city arterials, all of that. And so when we need matching funds for these preservation grants, that's the source that we get those matching funds from,
Right.
because it all deals with the overlay.
And I understand that,
So
but.
yes, the years we do preservation projects, there's a little bit less of other city arterials that are being overlaid.
So doing this project will jeopardize potentially those other neighborhood projects, because unless another 500,000 comes through
No.
whatever to fund it. Is that correct?
Council member, if I can jump in, no.
What?
No. So there's three different sources of funding that funds the preservation project. So this is predominantly MVET or gas tax money. So it funds the arterial road overlays.
Right.
The neighborhood is funded through the tax on solid waste.
Right.
So that is a separate funding source than 102.
Okay.
So the overlay program, it was anticipated we were doing this project. So the overlay program has less arterials in 2026 than if we weren't doing this. But the net effect is we're paving more because we have a $2.6 million grant that if we don't match it with, we wouldn't have that grant. So we're leveraging the money further than if we did not have the grant. And there's no impact to the neighborhood overlays that would be done.
Okay, well, I think this is a great way to leverage money, don't get me wrong, but I'll maybe rephrase my question when we get to the further in our agenda where the minus 500,000 is. Okay. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I move to forward option 1 to the November 18, 2025 City Council consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is this the first time you presented?
I think the second time,
Second
actually.
time,
Yes.
okay, well,
I am a new face, but it's great to see you all.
You're doing well.
Oh, I
Thank
try
you.
to.
And I should say that Lydia has joined us. Thank you, Lydia, for being here. Okay, we'll move to item C, approve project acceptance, 27th Avenue Southwest at Southwest 344th Compact Roundabout Project. Mr. Cole.
Good evening, council members, committee members, committee chair. I'm here today to present the project acceptance for the 27th and 344th Compact Roundabout. A policy question I have for you today is, should the council accept the 27th Ave Southwest and Southwest 344th Street Compact Roundabout Project constructed by Active Construction as complete? Action needed today, just for explanation, city council must accept the work as complete in order to meet Department of Revenue, Economic Security Department, and L&I requirements. Financial summary for this project. Council authorized a maximum contract amount for this project of $767,697. Actual construction contract came in at $724,130, which left us under budget $43,567. Options considered today are option 1 and option 2. The mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the November 18th City Council consent agenda for approval. It's the map of where the roundabout was placed, if you're unfamiliar. And as always, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Okay, do I see any questions? Yes, Councilmember Walsh?
So was the roundabout, I mean, it's just a strictly residential neighborhood there, correct?
Primarily.
Yeah.
344th is a bit of a through road, but yes,
So it was more of a, what do you refer to as traffic calming measure then?
correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
I'm ready to make the motion.
Okay, let's have a motion then.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the November 18, 2025 City Council consent agenda for approval.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, we're going to move to item D, authorize design advancement and bidding South 320th Street project, First Avenue to Southwest 99, 85% status. It's always interesting how we have such different ways to get to where we're going on the computer. Some pop right up, some got to go here. Go ahead.
Evening, Chair Rovi, committee members, council members. My name is Jeff Han. I'm the civil engineer for the city of Federal Way, and I'm presenting the South 320 Preservations Project, 85% design status report, and authorization to bid to committee. The policy question is, should the city council authorize staff to complete design and bid the South 320 Preservations Project and return to LUTC and council for bid award, further reports and authorization? Some background. This project provides replacements of existing curb ramps and pedestrian push buttons to meet current ADA standards, HMA pavement repairs, and 2.5-inch HMA overlay. The estimated expenditure is $3 million, which includes in-house design, estimated construction costs, construction contingency, construction management and inspection. The available funding for the South 320 Preservation Project is also $3 million and is comprised of the following: NHS grant, PSLC grant, and lift sale tax. The project is anticipated advertising January 2026 with construction start spring 2026. The options presented to the committees are: 1, authorize staff to complete the design and bid the South 320th Preservation Project and return to LUTC and council for bid award for the reports and authorization. 2, do not authorize staff to proceed with this project and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to November 18, 2025, council consent agenda for approval. And staff is available for any questions you may have.
Councilmember Walsh?
What with lift sale tax, what's the acronym LIFT?
Is the local infrastructure financing tool
Okay, thank you.
tax.
Tran?
Chair Dovey, I just want to take this opportunity to embarrass my brother-in-law for the last time. He's my brother-in-law.
Well, congratulations. I didn't know that. I have a question for you.
I was going to say, I see that your brother-in-law's kept things very quiet about, you know, just.
A question I have is, how much of this project, when you have ADA and overlay, you know, it never really says how much of the cost is for the ADA improvements. Do you have that number?
It's normally depending on the location for that road. If we have more wheelchair ramps, typically at the intersection you have 8 wheelchair ramps, and you have to meet ADA compliance, which is push buttons and to compliance with the wheelchair ramp. So it depends. I believe probably going to take about 1/4 to 1/3 of the paving project.
It will be ADA improvements?
Correct. Like last year with the overlay, we construct 264 wheelchair ramps, and each ramp is approximately about $5,000 to $6,000 a piece.
Okay.
It's going to vary a lot depending on the location.
Oh, no, I
'Cause if there
understand,
is a
okay.
traffic signal, then we have to upgrade like the ped push buttons and stuff, which gets to be a lot more expensive.
The reason I asked the question is we get these, I'm just thinking about it now, we get these across the dais all the time, and it's always an overlay project or an improvement project, but it's really asphalt and it's ADA, it's compliance, and it would be nice to know how those break down, so, you know, just probably good information to know,
Right.
educate us better.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely pull some numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially for these two projects, when we come back for bid award, we'll be able to say like what the breakdown is specifically for them. I mean, right now it'd be a little bit of a guess on our part, but I mean, Jeff's right on. It's 25 to 30% of the project
Okay.
typically.
Yeah. Okay, great. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I move to forward option 1 to the November 18, 2025 City Council consent agenda for approval.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to approve overlay project list and authorization, design advanced and bidding for the 2026 asphalt overlay. Mr. Strong.
All right. I'm John Strong. I'm a civil engineer here. This is presentations for the 2026 overlay program, preliminary project list and authorization. Our question today is, should the council approve the 26 asphalt overlay program preliminary project list and authorize staff to proceed with design and bidding of the proposed 26 asphalt overlay program? Some background information. We use the PMS system, and it's really, I guess, this year's a little different. It's all carryover from last year. So stuff that we couldn't, award last year, we're carrying over, and we've split the schedules up. We have about $3.45 million of funding. Obviously, we have $500,000 that's going to the 21st Preservation Project. That takes a little chunk out. So here you'll see the breakdown of our schedules. 12th Avenue from last year has now been split into 12th Avenue Southwest and 13th Way Southwest. And Campus Highlands West has been split into Campus Highlands North and Campus Highlands South. And 18th Ave is just a straight carryover. So it's a small schedule. We didn't need to split it up. Our estimated expenditures after contingency, in-house design, and admin inspection is about $4.21 million. And we have two options. One is to approve the list of streets for the 26 overlay as presented and authorize staff to bid the project, returning for authorization to award the project within the project budget to the lowest responsible bidder. Option 2 is to direct staff to modify the list and return to committee for further action. The mayor recommends option 1. Any questions? And I can show maps if you guys want to see them.
Okay, Councilmember Honda, you get the first whack at it.
Right, thank you. So when we increased the solid waste tax for residential overlays, was there ever a master list that said what neighborhoods for maybe the first 10 years were going to be done?
No.
So my next question is, I ride my bike a lot in this area where these are. And this summer when the neighborhoods were done over by, off of Campus Drive up the hill, I've been in worse neighborhoods than what those roads were, and yet those were overlaid. So I know that you go by the number. Are these then the worst neighborhoods in the city, or how did you pick these ones over other neighborhoods that, in my opinion, have more cracks, have been sealed more times? Maybe they're larger and they're not affordable to do. How do you pick a neighborhood to resurface?
So, as John said, these are all carryovers from schedules that were not able to be awarded last year, so we didn't pick any for this year. But stepping back from that for a second to answer your question, in general, we look at two things. One is the scoring direct that you referenced, which is an analytical. They go out, they scan the streets. There are a number of roads in the city that they're so bad they're past their point of return to be able to overlay them, and they've become full rebuilds. So we tackled one of them last year. We have another one that's carried over and it's getting rebuilt this spring that was part of the 25 overlay program.
Which one is that?
That's the Scarborough schedule from 2025 overlay.
But which road is it?
It's 279th Place Northeast.
Okay, thanks.
So those roads are a little bit more involved. So the roads that have completely failed, we have a slightly different approach, which are which may be some of the ones that you're identifying as well. So the ones that have to be completely rebuilt, it's not really feasible to go in and build a schedule of just those roads. Between the stormwater requirements that go with that, the amount of work that goes into it, that's just not practical. So typically, we're targeting streets that are at the end of their useful life, that are about to be hitting that point, but that they're still capable, the sub-base is still solid enough that we can still skim off the top pavement and put new pavement in. So those are the roads we're specifically looking at. Full well acknowledge that there's a number of roads that are worse than that we're trying to pick off one at a time. So we look at that. The second thing we do is that list far exceeds the available funding. So what we end up doing is we end up looking at what makes sense from a geographic perspective. And there's a balancing act. You know, we're paying contractors to move equipment when we do this. So if we have roads that we have 5, 6 roads in one area that are all bad, we're going to try and group them together. That way we're not paying the contractor to move equipment all over the city, and then group it by geography, by year, if that makes sense, to minimize our costs. And that's a little bit, to your point, that's a little bit of we're in one area based on roads 1, 2, and 3. Road 4 might be over on the other end of town, so it makes more sense to skip it from an economics perspective and do Road 5 this year and then go back and do Road 4 next year. So those are the two principal ways we pick the roads. It's all driven by data and price. We're not truly looking at it on a macro level of just getting the absolute worst roads, because we know those are rebuilds. And like I said, we try and tackle about 1 a year of those. But if we only tackled them, we wouldn't really be making progress on the overlay program holistically either. So there's a balancing act there.
So about what age are these roads that are going to be redone?
So we're basing them based on ratings, not necessarily age. So the ratings tend to be anywhere from 40 to 55, 58, that neck of the woods. You know, there are certainly roads that are from the late 50s, early 60s that were built under King County that see very little traffic, and they're still up in the 70s, high 70s and low 80s. That they're still in relatively good shape, but they're 60 years old, 70 years old. There's no reason to rebuild or overlay those roads because they're still in great shape. There's other roads that are from especially the late 80s before the city incorporated that were still built under King County, but maybe the standards weren't followed as much as they probably should have been. And the roads are not as old. Maybe they see traffic, maybe they don't, but they're falling apart. So, you know, we're looking at it more on condition necessarily than age. But, you know, we don't have a magic when the road turns this old. We have to do something.
So if a road is so bad that you have to take it down to the dirt or whatever, and do you have a list of when the next one would be? Like, if you're going to do one a year, do you have that list established, or you just?
So it's the same list. It's based on the same pavement data. So it's the same conversation of where are we? How can we minimize mobilization costs for contractors? The same contractors do both types of work. So we're not bringing in a different contractor per se. The bigger thing with that conversation is it triggers a whole bunch of other requirements, specifically stormwater. So when we take a road to the sub-base, we have to bring not only ADA up to compliance, we have to bring stormwater up to compliance for the road as well. So that is costly, and you know it's the right thing to do, certainly from an environmental perspective, but the design takes time. It's typically not something we can fund through grants. It's considered deferred maintenance by the city. So there's a balancing act of available funding versus what we can actually get done.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Daniel?
Yeah, a couple questions. First one is, we use the term overlay, but it sounds like, is overlay used for the ADA's stormwaters, just a scraping and then tearing it all the way down to do rebuild? Is the terminology used the same for all of them?
No, it's overlay is I think a lot of what you described. It's leaving a portion of the existing pavement in place and milling off the top layer and then repaving it.
So what's,
Rebuild is
Rebuild,
is the term to take it all the way to the subbase.
so if they came with a proposal, it would say rebuild instead of overlay on it then?
Correct.
Okay. And the second part I think you might have mentioned is, so it sounds like certain things allow us to use grants, others don't. I believe B and C were grant-based, or actually D, E does not look like it has a whole bunch of grants. Is that because this is classified as maintenance and not required for the overlay in the ADA? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I'd say it's a little more nuanced than that. So the grant funding that we got for the other two programs are based on the concept of being able to move freight on a regional basis. So it's largely based around they're roads that are not just serving the city, they're serving the region.
Is that why it's commerce that gave them?
Correct.
That makes sense.
So we are not eligible to get those in neighborhoods.
Gotcha.
So a lot of it comes down to that conversation of where can we secure grant money from? And, we'll take grant money from anywhere. I'm not too opinionated. But, it's really hard to get grant money for neighborhood roads.
Okay.
Especially when a lot of the work is considered, as you said, maintenance.
So that's a big indicator would be is how much is it commercial versus residential usage?
I would say how much of it serves the region.
Region?
More so than commercial.
Gotcha. I understand. And then the next question I has, on any of these guys that we're looking at for the 2026, are they all sewer connectors, or is there any of these guys that are on septic, these neighborhoods?
I believe.
I'm not looking for a right now thing, but by when we have the vote on this, I'd be curious to know on that one.
Okay, I can look into that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Oh, I was just going to ask, want to go back a slide or two? There, okay. Those first two, the 12th Avenue and 13th Way, and then the two Campus Highlands one, you said that last year they were combined and now they're separated. Is it just a matter of semantics or why?
No, so we're separating them just in case of, because last year we couldn't afford a few, right? So we had to cut some schedules. So instead of coming in with just 3 big schedules, we'd like to split it up just in case the bid's too high.
The bids
We
are-
can
okay,
cut
gotcha,
something and
gotcha.
not cut like a $1.5 million.
All right, gotcha. All right, thank you.
Councilmember?
Thank you, Chair. You or EJ may have mentioned this, and if I missed it, my apology. But by looking at this, even if you transfer $500,000 from another project to this project, you still short about $760,000. How are you going to pay for the project?
Well, we always like to over-design, right? We never want to have any money left over. And if we have any, if it's over budget, then we end up just cutting a schedule and we move to the next year, So it's always better to have more schedules designed and be ready to pay for it than have less, and have leftover money.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up on that question, because you are going to be short unless
Yeah.
you guys pull a rabbit out of the hat somewhere, some more REIT money or whatever happens. But, and mobilization is a big cost. So do you already know which one you're not going to do? Are you going to,
No, we haven't discussed
you
that
haven't
yet.
got that far yet?
We want to see how much, maybe bid come under really low, we get lucky and we don't have to cut that much, but
Okay.
we'll discuss that when we
So
figure
it'd
it
be
out.
coming back to the council somewhere and saying, here's what we've approved, but we're only going to do this much because we already know we're 700,000 short.
Yeah, when we do authorization to award, we'll come back with
Up
what
to.
schedules we want to
Okay.
cut.
And the other question, Council McDaniel brought this up, I guess this would probably be more for those old roads that you got to take down to the base, right? Or you can't really overlay. Would those, I imagine a lot of those are in places that don't have sewer. I mean, I can think of places in Federal Way where the roads are kind
Yeah.
of rounded and there's trenches along the side and has that ever been?
Yeah, I'm not sure we've ever tried to overlay the two conversations and look at sewer versus that. I mean, that's certainly something we can look into, but when we do this, I mean, we're typically more approaching it for an analytical, how can we maximize the money?
Right.
But, and we can certainly have a future conversation about that.
Well, it would just seem that an overlay in certain areas, it's already got sewer, you wouldn't even come in. But if we're talking about replacing a road that was in 1980, that was in King County, that wasn't up to standards, and was built somewhere where there aren't sewers, we might want to be looking at that. So we're working with Lake Haven, and maybe we can.
So we
do some-
do share these lists with Lake Haven. So Lake Haven has the next 3 years worth of lists already.
Right.
As do all the utility companies. So PSE hits the
Right.
same list.
But-
So I mean, they certainly could advance
Well-
that conversation if they want.
Well, I guess where I'm going with it is a little different. We share the list, but we know that there's state money for infrastructure and the commerce for sewers. And we're interested in doing overlay. I mean, that's what you're all here to do. But maybe we should broaden our thought a little bit, unless, maybe you already are, but how could we get some of that infrastructure money for sewers while we're gonna not overlay, but rebuild a street? There might be some synergies where they can get some money, we get some money, and we think more universal. Maybe we
Yeah.
already are, but
Yeah, and we have teamed with Lake Haven on a number of projects for them to either upsize, replace mains, and I can think of at least one example where they did actually lengthen the sewer in advance of an overlay. But certainly, I can bring that up with John Bowman again as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Emberwood in 2025, they put a big line down 308th, so right before we came in there and paved, so.
okay. Okay, any other questions on E? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the November 18, 2025 City Council consent agenda for approval.
Second?
It's been moved and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Awesome.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to approve resolution designating a portion of South 316th Street as a festival street. Mr. Perez.
Good evening. Let's see, getting going here, and let's see. Okay.
Or should we
I'm
call
on
it the trick-or-treating street?
Right. So, policy question tonight is, should the council pass a resolution designating a portion of South 316th Street as a festival street? Apparently the desire is to create downtown attractions. Since we have the Federal Way Farmers Market under city control now, and that could be placed on 316th Street, which also provides a symbiotic connection between Town Square Park and the Performing Arts and Events Center. So with that, this proposal was presented, and one of the things we wanted to verify what the issues might be with King County Metro, since they operate the A-Line bus route on 316th. So this didn't get in the staff report because I got their comments too late to get it in. So, but wanted to describe that a little bit. So they're initially thinking that they would reroute the A-Line when 316th was closed to 320th. Signing that and communicating that certain times and days the route would be rerouted is kind of complex, and how to provide that signage at the relocated bus stops. They're proposing they wouldn't have enough room to sign that explicitly, and so they'd only be signing that in English. So if there's people relying on that information that aren't fluent in English, might be some communication issues there. And my understanding was the proposal was simply to do this on weekends, and there's enough flex in the schedule for the A-Line that they can do this reroute, which is a little bit longer, without disrupting their schedules. But they would note that if there was a desire to do this on weekdays, that it could be disruptive to their schedules. So with those caveats, options considered is to approve the proposed resolution, or option 2, to not approve that resolution and provide direction to staff. The mayor's recommendation is option 1, forwarded the proposed resolution to the consent agenda for approval.
Lydia. You got your blue light on. Go right ahead.
So with languages, why is it only in English?
Because the signs they would use aren't very large, and so to describe that in multiple languages would be problematic. I was kind of brainstorming a little bit, thinking about this, and if we can get them to include like a QR code or something that they could scan,
Yeah.
and then that would take them to the website and explain where they needed to go, that might be a workaround.
Okay, that was going to be my suggestion. Thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Well, thank you. I was going to suggest a QR code too. So my question is that we are only doing this for the farmer's market.
Well, the way I worded the resolution was to make it open-ended, so not specifying what it would be for, recognizing that there might be other events that might be appropriate for that.
So what would be the method if somebody wanted to close it down? Then would they go to the mayor's office, go to Public Works, go to the council? If someone wanted to have a celebration and use that road, close it down, how would they do that?
So my assumption would be that it would be a city-sponsored event, for instance, Christmas tree lighting or whatever. But that you could potentially do that with a right-of-way activity permit, which we would use. I mean, typically that's used for neighborhood block parties and things like that. But that could potentially be an avenue to be used that already exists, rather than having some special dispensation, some request.
So under the way the resolution's drafted, the event has to be pedestrian-oriented, and it has to be city-sponsored, and the mayor authorizes it. Those are the three big pieces.
And I had one other question, but it has slipped my mind. So on the days that it would be the farmer's market, it would be closed like at 6 and open at 4 or something? Is that,
It would be whatever the time frame that we would need it closed for. I would assume it would also include the time for setting up the traffic.
that would be setting up and taking down, yeah?
Yeah.
If we continue the same hours?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. Oh, I know, my other question. Parking. As long as we still, the target property is still undeveloped and we still haven't had any money given to us yet, my understanding is we can use that for parking. Is that what we're anticipating using for parking for people using this space? Because they're going to have to park somewhere, and in Town Square Park, there is not enough parking.
Correct. I would, to be honest, I don't know the answer to that. I would assume we could use the pack parking as well as the target area for parking in addition to the transit center for parking for events like that.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it seems like on a Saturday, there should be transit center parking available as well. And
As long as it's not a game day.
as long as it's not a game day, yeah. And I also previously had my light on because I was going to say QR code, but it, yeah.
All right.
It seems
Great
like
minds think
it seems
alike.
like that's, the sensible minds here have come up with something that Metro should have come up with,
So my question on the QR code, since I've never used one, how many languages are on the signs now?
To be honest, I don't know.
I've never seen a sign with multiple languages that talks about the bus route, so
Right.
I have no idea how many we're talking about.
They do try to use symbols as much as possible.
Okay. Finger pointing, go this way, right? Okay. Do you know how many are on
Well,
there?
King County does have a website where you can click on the various languages that
Yeah.
you want, so this could be incorporated into that, I think.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
okay. I just never seen a sign with, well, anyway. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed resolution to the November 18, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
So, good evening, Chair, members of council. E.J. Walsh, Public Works Director. Tonight, on behalf of a whole bunch of staff that's not here, I am presenting a update on the Surface Water Management Utility Comprehensive Plan. So as background, staff has been working on this for a year and a half. So Rob Van Orso, who many of you know very well, has kind of led the charge on this, as well as our operations staff, our engineering staff, our outreach staff, development staff has all been involved, as has the Parks Department, Community Development, and the Mayor's Office. So with that, the policy question before you is, should City Council approve the Surface Water Management Utility 2026 through 2031 Comprehensive Plan Update? So as a little bit of background, we have a current comprehensive plan that in place, and we have to do a periodic update to that plan. So that is what's before you. This is not a get rid of the old in with the new as much as an update where it's truly taking off the projects that have been accomplished within the capital program, adding the new projects at the end of it, as well as updating it to match our current MPDS permit requirements, and some of the other city initiatives that have that we've been working on for a number of years. So some of the requirements around the plan is that it details the maintenance functions, obviously regulatory requirements, and updates those capital improvement plans that I mentioned. So in 2019, so the last time this was significantly updated, and we do or biannual updates to this as well, but the last significant update was in 2019. The City Council adopted a rate model and ordinances that fund the utility. As part of this, there are no changes to that. So we are not proposing any sort of rate change with this. There's no re-rate study. There's none of that was done as part of this, nor was it required to be. But there are no tax implications as a result of updating this ordinance. Then on the other side of the equation, so this is a plan. This is not the city budget. So the plan outlines the projects on a 7-year timeline. It does not physically allocate money to those individual projects. That happens as part of the budget process. So the projects are identified in here, but this does not give staff or the city authorization to actually start said projects. So as a little bit of background, one of the questions we typically get is, what is involved with stormwater in the city? So, the very simplistic explanation that I share when I'm asked this in the community is, what happens with the rainwater when it rains? That's what stormwater is. So what happens from the time it hits the ground somewhere in Federal Way till it reaches the Puget Sound? Doesn't matter if that's on public property, private property, someone's roof, the garage, driveway, road. Ultimately, it ends up in the Puget Sound. All the stormwater citywide goes through our infrastructure at one point or another, no matter where it falls. And we have a network of infrastructure that conveys and moves it through the city. So that all sounds well and good, and everyone goes, well, okay, so the city owns a couple of pipes and you transport the water. And we kind of downplay the amount of infrastructure that stormwater utility is responsible for. So this is as of the beginning of this year. The catch basins were actually over 23,000 now, but we are responsible for 23,011 catch basins in the city. So every one of them gets leaves on top of them. We are responsible for 386 miles of pipe under the roads, under the parks, under, you name it. And that's just the public infrastructure. We have 91 miles of ditches. So I know the ditches came up a little bit earlier, related to sanitary, but we have 91 miles of ditch line that we're responsible for removing sediment from, clearing trees from, and making sure the water flows. And then we have a whole bunch of technical stormwater stuff. So we have constructed ponds, dispersion trenches, coalescent plates. So coalescent plates remove oil from stormwater. So oil that drips off your car, that's how we remove it before it hits the Puget Sound. And a number of other things. In addition to our actual infrastructure, the EPA sets permit requirements. They are handed down to the state. The state in turn enforces them against us through the Department of Ecology. So there's 13 core requirements. If you look at our actual permit document, our NPDES permit's about 1,100 pages. It boils down into these 13 points, but we are responsible for everything associated with that. So the big things it covers is obviously infrastructure and capital improvements. It also covers what we do with monitoring and how we ensure we're treating stormwater adequately. It requires things like public education. So what are we doing to actually educate members of the community on what they should be doing or should not be doing? And then it covers planning, so events like this that we're required to have. So as part of this plan, we did have a pretty robust public outreach process to solicit feedback from the community. So we had public and stakeholder meetings. We had 2 in-person meetings, and then we did an online session. We also did a virtual open house that was open for, I believe, 30 days for people to go through at their own pace, at their own time, and provide feedback. We did tabling at multiple public events, so everything from the farmers market to Rainfest. There's a dedicated project webpage with all of the draft documents on it, and then we accepted feedback and comments in person through a dedicated webpage, and we had a dedicated email address to solicit input on this. Most of the comments that we got were around either acquiring additional property for the purpose of conservation or basically, hey, there's a flooding concern at this intersection, can you guys go do something, which was not really the point of the feedback, but certainly we took all that as well and have been working through that as well. So on the capital program side, so these are programs, and the stormwater utility operates a little bit differently than most of the other utilities and the other just general departments of the city. So the stormwater utility has non-capital programs and capital programs. So a non-capital program example would be education and outreach. It's a requirement of the permit. We have to have it. We do it. But it's not a capitalized thing. We also have capital programs. So capital programs are required to be in the CIP. And they include basically maintenance to capital assets. So the list before you hasn't really changed. The ones that we did modify slightly based on some of the feedback we've gotten over the last couple of years is we slightly altered the annual catch basin repair program to go to every other years. This was funded at a lower amount. It was funded at $75,000 every year. So we decreased the funding a little bit to put more money into the annual regional pond maintenance and rehabilitation program, and to move that from a biannual to an annual. So those are the 2 that really changed on this. The top 3 are all programs we've been using for a long time, and they cover everything from CCTV and actually inventorying the conditions of those assets as well as repairing them. And like I said, those bottom 2 got tweaked a little bit as part of this. We also have capital projects. So the first 2 pages of this, which is going to be everything that you see going down the left-hand side with numbers, those are all projects that are in the capital program today. So these are not projects that have changed. These are projects that are still in future years that we haven't, they're in the current plan. We're not modifying them. We just haven't gotten to the point of building them yet either. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm happy to answer questions about any of them, but I'll highlight a couple. So the West Hylobos Conservation Property Acquisition, that goes back to 2007. The council has had a policy trying to preserve property down in the West Hylobos Basin area, which is effectively 359th South, namely on the east side of Pack Highway. So that program is still ongoing. We got a grant through CFT and purchased 2 properties 2 years ago, I believe it was. But there are still, I believe, 3 target parcels from 2007 that we have not acquired, and that's what that project is. Continuing down, as part of the activation, this has also been on there for a long time. You see Project 34281, which has multiple different projects and phases, which is the trail system. So this is a partnership with the Parks Department to expand the park trail system through West Hylebos and the Blueberry Farm to cross the road and continue down on the west side of Pack Highway, and activate some of those trails and increase the trail network through the city for beneficial use of the members of the community. Second page, like I said, everything that you see with numbers is in the existing plan as it stands today. These are a little bit more, I'm going to say, technical infrastructure projects. So the Redondo Creek Culvert, that project is the one that is actively under construction under Dash Point Road right now. If you've driven by it, it should be finished up next year. So this project is being carried forward because it's a 26 to 2031 plan, and construction continues into 2026. But effectively, that project will be done early next year. And the cost that you see is the remaining balance on that contract. So continuing down, we have a number of Cold Creek projects that are high priority projects with failing infrastructure that we're working our way through. And then a couple other emergent projects that we're aware of, and the one I will focus on is the Lakota Berm project. So the city did a project in the late 90s to restore the Lakota Berm that had been built around the park previously. That entire berm is built on peat and has been sinking since it was originally built. So in the late 90s, the berm they basically brought in 2.5 feet of fill and put it on top of the berm, and that has continued to sink. The outlet structure is sinking as well. So that's one of those projects that we know eventually we're going to have to address and go in and stabilize that area in some way, shape, or fashion to keep it from continuing to sink. So those are all the projects. So the options before you tonight are to approve the Surface Water Management Utility 26 to 31 Comprehensive Plan Update, or option 2 is to not approve it and provide direction to staff. The mayor's recommendation is option 1, and I'm happy to answer any questions. The last thing I will say is in your packet, there is a link to the full document, full CIP plan. We did have a map in here with all the projects on it, and frankly, the whole city just looked like a giant star because there's so many projects on this list. So if you would like to see an actual map of the projects, it is linked in your packets.
Councilmember Daniel?
It's actually a small one, it's only 32 pages. So my question real quick is, I'm assuming that the swim fund is 304?
So it's combined. It's actually 2. It's 401 and 304, but yes.
Okay, thank you. I noticed all those had 304, so I made an estimated guess on that.
Yeah, so 304 is the capital side. 401 is operations and non-capital.
Gotcha.
If you want the really technical answer.
I actually do, thank you. And then, so my question is going to be is swim a restricted fund?
Yes.
And then what are the funds able to be used for? Because I know we've used them for different things, but I don't know what the list is.
So it effectively is the 13 points that are right there. So it basically, to use the money, it has to fall into one of those things. So I don't know if you have something specific in mind that you're.
No, I
you're thinking of.
was curious on what the usage are for, because I know we've used it to, I think, buy property. We've also used it to pay for some park stuff in the past. I saw a list of a bunch of items that obviously you guys got to maintain, and then more stuff. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the restrictions are on that fund. And then, is the funds adequate for doing what we need right now, or are they still coming in a little under, or do you just have to keep pushing jobs off at the moment?
The fund, so that's a pretty complicated question that I'm not sure you intended it to be, but so in 2019, we had a outside consultant do a fairly comprehensive rate study. That rate study looked at 4 different models, and the 4 different models, and basically it was a choice of a level of service. So it ranged from basically do everything to the best of our ability, be more proactive with conserving property, be more proactive with building trail projects and stuff that doesn't necessarily have to be built today, to as kind of like level 1. Level 4 being basically do the absolute bare minimum to meet these permit requirements and do the absolute minimum of maintenance to prevent infrastructure from failing, but don't do anything proactive to help future infrastructure. And then option 2 and 3 were somewhere in the middle. Ultimately, the direction we received from council was basically level 2 and like tiptoe into level 3 in a couple of the areas, but effectively minimize our investment to not saddle the future with, or not saddle the city with future problems, but also don't do anything that isn't justifiably necessary was basically the direction. It's a lot longer than that, but that's effectively what it was.
Cash flow then.
Yeah, so now what I will say, and where this gets a little more complicated, is that rate model looked at one of the areas that we need to make some progress on is the regional stormwater facilities. And so the rate model looked at what is the benefit of those regional facilities and over the duration, so kind of looking at the time value of money. And should the current residents today be paying to improve them for the next 50 years of use? Or is that something that should be effectively prorated and, our kids, our grandkids, whatever the case may be, that are getting those benefits 30, 40 years ago, the rates at that point should be paying for it. So we should pay a proportionate share today, but, someone else should be paying for the year 30 portion, which, would typically be known as a bond. So the rate model that was included a couple different scenarios of using bonds, not using bonds. So the scenario that, like 2 to 3 scenario that we outlined, did call for using 3 different bonds over the course of 2019 through 2029. To date, we have not pulled any bonds against the swim utility, but to accomplish everything that's on the 2019 to 2029 agenda in the rate study for that, we would need to take a bond for some of that future work. We have been trying to meet all of the objectives in that rate study without the need for the bond, and so far we've been on track. But that is my hesitation to just say, is the rate sufficient to fund it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is, and if you want to pull the bond, it absolutely is. But we are trying to do everything without that need, and so far we've been on track to do that, which is a very long answer to your not so long question.
Oh, well, the details, the devil's in the detail, and I like that information. So with that asked then, does the fund have a minimum balance requirement?
It does.
And then what is the current funding structure for that fund? Like, what is the revenue stream that goes straight into that one?
So the swim utility tax is part of your property tax bill. So if you look at the postcard you get from King County and when you remit your taxes, you'll see there's a bunch of different lines on it. And, the big one is property tax. Then, the ST3 ballot measure that everyone loves is one of the other lines. One of the lines is surface water utility, and that is what funds this. So this fund gets a cash infusion twice a year from King County. And that's it. It does not collect revenue any other point in the year.
Gotcha. And then is there usually do we ever have to pull general funds of your knowledge in order to balance that one out?
We cannot pull general funds. So the swim utility is a standalone utility that the city operates. It is actually part and parcel separate from the city. So the council serves as the executive committee for the swim utility. However, it is not. You cannot move money back and forth. It's a standalone utility of the city.
But you can take a bond towards that for funding it.
So you're taking a bond against the future tax revenue from it. You're not taking a bond against the general fund.
Gotcha.
Per se, like we would for anything else.
All right, interesting. Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, with the with that tax, that rate levy, do you figure the amount of impermeable surfaces, does that impact the?
It does.
Or what?
So we use what's called an equivalent residential unit. So if you're familiar with the way sewer utilities work, it's very similar. So basically what the city does is the city sets the rate, which was done in 2019, and the rate is established through 2029. based on the average residential house size within the city limits. And then every residential unit is assigned one. So if you're a residential house, it doesn't matter if you're on a 10-acre lot or a postage stamp, that is one house. So if you're residential, you pay the same amount regardless of where in the city you are. Where it changes is for commercial. So commercial, basically there's a formula that King County uses, and it is exactly to your point, impervious area that is on the parcel, and that is converted to the equivalent number of residential units. So I want to say the number is like 1,800 square feet. Don't quote me on that. I can confirm it for you if you want, but of impervious per residential property. So if you have a property with 30,000 square feet of impervious, because you're a corporate office park, it would be 30,000 divided by 18, and that would be your number of residential units that determines your fee. So for anything non-residential, so the one that we get asked a lot about is multifamily. Multifamily in that conversation is considered commercial.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and so what is the rate per, I mean,
I can get it for you. I don't remember off the top of my head.
don't worry about it. So just one other quick question. With the meetings and stuff that you had, for the public input meetings, how many people show up for those?
So the two in-person ones, I'd say we probably had 20 at one and 50 at the other. There were people there. A lot of them, frankly, were the LMD members that are vested into stormwater. So the lake management districts. The open house actually had some pretty good attendance. Now, granted, that was something you could do from your computer, your phone, whatever, on your own time. So that had, I want to say it was right around 1,000 unique hits.
Wow. So more than just staff then?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed surface water management utilities 2026 through 2031 comprehensive plan update to the November 18, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hey, is it possible that we move item I up instead of H? We've had a couple gentlemen here I told them I'd be done by 6 and I passed it. So could we switch the schedule, please? Sorry. Do we need to have a motion to do that?
I move that we do item I next before item H.
I'll second that.
Been moved to second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you for,
So since it's I it is.
aye, 3 ayes.
You know how long-winded the city attorney is, so good choice. So do I. Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members Walsh and Tran, and council members Keith Niven, Community Development Director. This evening, we're going to be talking about a Wayside Church of Christ development agreement, and there are some gentlemen here from representing the church. So if you have questions for the church, I think we have representatives in the audience that can field those, which would do a better job than I can. So the policy question in front of the City Council is, should the City Council approve the negotiation of a development agreement with Wayside Church? And I will explain that in a second. So as you know, Wayside Church is located on Dash Point across the street from Lakota Park. And Wayside Church, like many of the churches in our city, have a generous piece of property, more than what they need for their church purposes. In other words, if you look at it, you've got the church, you've got the parking lot, and then the rest of the property is currently treed and vegetated. And so we entered into some conversations with some churches around the city. And given the fact that we know we need more housing opportunities within the city, we asked questions of those church property owners. Have you ever thought about potentially disposing of some of your property for future residential use? And so Wayside Church, we met with them maybe 2 or 3 times, I've lost track. And we haven't had really we haven't gotten down into the weeds yet. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and it's really all that's being asked of the city council this evening is to start kind of opening the door for us to have more conversations. So the church identified kind of the southeast corner of the property, which is where this 1.1 acres sits, as what they thought was probably the most developable part of their property. And so that's what's showing up in this image. I assumed you guys would say, well, if we turn that into housing, what would that ultimately look like? And so I did just a couple quick layouts here, and they haven't even seen this. My apologies. But I only have so many hours in the day. So this would be a choice where, you know, if ultimately they want to do cottages, like a single story, this particular unit is 860 square feet, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, and a 1-car garage. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could get about 9 on that 1.1 acres of property. Now, obviously, this hasn't gone through site planning. I haven't talked to EJ about what he might want if this property developed for residential development. But somewhere around 8 or 9 cottages could potentially fit on the property. If, on the other hand, they said, well, gee, it seems like you should be able to get more housing than that, then a different housing type would be something like townhouses. So here's what a 1,580 square foot townhouse would look like. You can see kind of 3plexes and duplexes, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So this is about 15. And, you know, this would be a much different neighbor for them. And so part of this conversation, if you guys agree that we should go down this path, would be to kind of explore the different housing types, what the church might want to have as a neighbor. And the city, what we're bringing to this conversation is really our experience working with developers. The avenue that we would pursue would be a development agreement of some type, where the builder and the church and the city would likely enter into an agreement that would identify what everybody's bringing to the table. Couple things to point out to you all. Right now, from our city code, we say that we're not really interested in doing development agreements for properties less than 5 acres. Now, I'm going to raise my hand. I put this in code, and the reason I put this in code is because at some point the properties are so small, it takes a lot of staff time to work on these development agreements, and so the reason why I put that 5 acres in was to basically have a dividing line where some things would be so small we just wouldn't entertain an idea for a development agreement. Their property is, I think it's like 4.5 acres. It is just a slice under 5 acres. So one of the things that we've talked about, and this is something Kent and I have talked about, is we would need to do a code amendment before we brought this forward for council approval. Not this question tonight. The question tonight of should we do some work and see if this goes anywhere, that's a whole different thing. But if we actually get to a development agreement and put it together, we would need to do a code amendment that would make this not a problem. And I think the easiest way to do that is to exempt properties owned by religious institutions. Because if ultimately the city says this is something we want to do, and we want to do it for maybe multiple churches in town, that would be the cleanest way to allow that to happen. But we would still need to do that. And that's only if you guys say yes. So the second piece is development agreements cost about $34,000. That's to cover staff costs. And one of the things that the mayor is willing to do is to recommend waiving that permit fee so that the church wouldn't have to come up with that because they may or may not have the means to do that. So the recommendation for you all is moving forward with the negotiation of development agreement with Wayside Church and waiving the application fee. And I am here for any questions.
Okay. I see lots of lights. Before we have questions, I'm going to make one comment. Since I'm the chair, I'm going to take this to say that. This whole project has come out of myself and other council members and Keith going out to different churches and talking about affordable housing, being able to drive the cost of purchase down so people can afford houses in Federal Way, and thinking outside the box. And so that's why it's here today. I've been in the background working on this with Keith and the churches, so now it's time for questions, but here we go. Jack Walsh, you're first.
Yeah, I would just, not really a question, but just a comment. I think that the real reason for the, the $30,000 or $34,000 cost and the city absorbing it is to help it become more affordable, to be able to meet that market. And so it's not so much that, whether or not the church can afford it or not, I don't think that's as relevant as what it is to help make the property cost low enough so that it is more affordable for people. So anyway.
Okay, Councilmember McDaniel?
Thank you. My first question is the developer agreement in general. Why does it make sense? Like, I've only seen development agreements on like big projects. This seems smaller than I've seen before, even the size of the property does. What makes this worth doing a development agreement, and then what is the benefit of doing a development agreement? Do we do this with small plots too, development agreements?
So the smallest development agreement I've ever done was for a traffic signal.
Oh, wow.
Where basically a property owner wanting to build at a location who was hit by a development moratorium wanted to move his project through during the moratorium and was willing to cost share with the city a new traffic signal at 70%, 30%. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a certain size, although you're right. They're generally for bigger pieces of property because you need some level of sophistication to get through the process because it's pretty convoluted. The reason to do a development agreement is because it's an opportunity for a win-win, potentially win if it's a three-party development agreement outcome. And obviously the city has an interest in trying to get some affordable housing that's maybe ownership. So as we start to talk about this with the church, we can put our expectations on the table. They'll put their expectations on the table, and then we can go out and see if there's a builder willing to meet everybody's expectations. So it's a way for us to kind of like, we had a different seat at the table for TC3 and with Trent because we own the property. In this case, we don't own the property. They could go out and solicit their property for a builder and get whatever they get, and we get built whatever we get built. The value and the ability that we had with like First Avenue townhouses to say we want those to be ownership opportunities if possible, that got us the ability to make an ask of the builder, and even though they didn't give us a firm commitment, that's what we're getting at First Avenue with that project there. So I think the benefit for us is we get a seat at the table. We get to share and hear from the church what they want and see where that intersects with what the city would like to see. And then ultimately, we might get a better project than, and candidly, and I'm a pretty candid person, so I apologize if it's a little edgy. They don't know much about development. They could go hire a professional to educate them on development and working with a builder. We're kind of going to be their expert because we feel like we have a relationship already. So I think I'm going to stop talking and let you ask another question if you want, but hopefully I at least answered it a little bit.
So what I got out of that in layman's terms is the development agreement makes us a partner with them to help them out in the areas that may be an uphill battle or a learning curve. And at the same time, we have a little bit of a input on what might be the best solution for everybody in that location.
That would be my take,
Okay.
yes.
Then I have a couple questions that may be part of the development agreement. Just let me know if they are. So when this goes down to, these are my blunt questions, like who owns the land when we go through with this thing? Who pays for the build out? Do they have sewers on the location? And when the houses get built, how is that laid out? Is this all stuff that would be discussed in that one, or those questions that would be in that, and then maybe some of just other questions?
So all of that would be in the development agreement. It would basically, the way I envision it, and obviously this can be constructed in a lot of different ways, but the way I envision it, it will be a three-party agreement. A builder will say, when this document is executed, I have a certain amount of time before I pay them to buy the property. It's got to get divided from the parcel now because it's all one parcel. The builder, and this is part of the negotiation, the builder might have to do the subdivision to create a separate parcel, and that may be done as a short plat, or they just may go ahead and plat it out individually and have the church be on lot 1, and all the rest of the parcels would then be for their own sale.
Okay.
You know, the type of housing, all that kind of stuff would be kind of spelled out in the development agreement.
Okay, and I guess the last question is actually for members of the church. My question to you guys is, I know we're looking at building these houses. My first thing, and I've mentioned this to another council member, is have you talked to your congregation? Is there anybody interested in moving, living closer to the church? Would they be one of the first people that we'd be looking at actually interested in purchasing something?
Yeah, I'm Eric Johnson. I'm the current, what we call moderator, so head of our church council. I don't know that we've had anybody express interest from our congregation in living in this housing. I know that we have had, over the past at least 2 or 3 years, if not more, been talking about, who we are as a congregation, what does our faith lead us to do, and, this was definitely a subject that's been discussed in our congregation as far as, how can we help with affordable housing in our community, and, by using some of our land that we don't currently, really use for worship or supporting our worship and other groups that do meet in our facilities.
So some of the questions that came up, Bill Curlin Hackett. In 2019, we communicated with Mr. Walsh's predecessor and found out what the permitting requirements would be if we were going to use affordable housing on our property. And we went through nonprofits. They came out, they looked at the issues that were there, they looked at the problems, Low Income Housing Institute and others, architects came out. So we did some diligence. We realized that they all weren't jumping at the project, and they all were backed up. In the meantime, the state did some things that made it nicer to use faith community property, density and things like that. I spent 24 years on the Interfaith Task Force on Homelessness, so I had a little bit of experience with development agreements and housing, so that's not new to me, but I won't be playing that kind of a role here. Mostly, we were looking at a way to enhance having housing. We're very pleased to see Federal Way looking into this. There were years when Federal Way was kind of not looked upon very favorably by the rest of the county around housing issues. And I am really pleased to see you looking at providing affordable housing, especially housing that isn't homeless housing. This is low-income ownership housing. That's a very significant population to serve, that this is sort of a pilot toward other congregations perhaps providing this same resource for Federal Way. I'm 78. I live mostly on Social Security, and my wife is still working. There's a niche that really needs to be able to afford this kind of housing, and I'm just really appreciative to the city, I'll say that much, and to the two Jacks for approaching us and meeting, and to Keith for his help. And we're relying a lot on the professionals here, meaning you folks in the city and the builders, and we will accommodate as much as we can on our end. In terms of this, will have to go to our congregation when we have an actual format of an agreement to approve it. I think right now that's a pretty sure vote for us. There may be a few folks who want to decline. It's a beautiful piece of property, and it just sits there. It's unfortunate to just have land in the middle of the city going to waste. The property behind our site is very rough wilderness and has a trail on it. We may get around to sprucing up the trail, and you can come out and go for a walk. But I'm saying way too much here, but I just want you to know that there is interest. Phil Wamba was really the one who brought this to us, along with Jack Dovey. And so I just want to say we'll consider everything we can to make this happen. Is that, okay.
All right. And then one of the questions I'm sure we're going to have in the future is, when you guys get done with this, are you looking at selling and walking away, or still being a piece of the ownership, maybe as a land lock or some kind of?
I think we're looking at a free and clear sale of this property. It won't be ours.
All right,
That's how I've understood the agreement, yeah.
all right, appreciate it.
Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. So I have several questions. Some of them have sort of been answered at this point. So you would sell the property to a developer who would have to subdivide it. And yet the $34,000 permit fee for the development agreement, the city would cover the cost of. I don't understand why we would do that if the property is being sold to a developer. The church is eventually getting money for the property. And I understand, I know the churches are all struggling at this point, which is unfortunate. But I have a little concern with the
Oh, I think this is mine.
waiving the permit fee for the development agreement.
So this is this is non-tested waters. I think what we are going to do is we are going to sit down with the church, if you guys approve this, and we're going to start talking about the details and putting a proposal together. That may take 6 months, that may take a year. You know, whether we get to a place, as we heard Bill say, you know, they went out and they kind of solicited developers previously and it didn't garner any fruit. Like, we may come up with our best proposal and there may be no builders interested in doing this for whatever reason. And so for them to go ahead and pay the $34,000, yes, that is absolutely a council decision to decide whether you want to waive this fee or not. I think what we're saying is, you know, that's my time, that's EJ's time, that's Kent's time, primarily the three of us, maybe Rick. So there's, you know, there's a handful of staff that we will spend time on this. And if you think that the potential outcome of, you know, if you decide that's not something the city wants to do, you know, that's your choice to say, we want to start a development agreement, but we don't believe we should waive the fee. Then they have to decide if they've got $34,000 to get this rolling or not.
So I'm wondering, so what's the maximum amount of homes that could be built on this piece of property?
Don't know yet. My guess is somewhere between 10 and 20.
And is that with yards, or is that just like the cottage houses that we have over by Mirror Lake?
So the denser product will be more like townhouses. So those have like maybe a 5-foot backyard and the front yard is kind of their driveway into their garage.
And the goal is to keep them under 300,000? Is that the goal?
So we haven't, so we're getting down into the details. We haven't even sat down with the church yet.
Okay.
They may say, you know what, we want it to be $200,000. We have Councilmember Dovey who's thrown $300 out at the wind.
Right.
At the end of the day, we need to get a builder in this conversation because they may say, you know what, we can't provide anything at that, but we can do something for $350 putting this construct together. So all of those things have not even been started yet. This is just, should we spend time to have this conversation and see if it leads anywhere or not?
So let's say that there's 5 other churches out there that have property that would be interested in this. We waive the fee for this church, then we're going to have to waive the fee for all churches.
Yep.
Could we do that?
Yep.
We could do that, and it would not hurt your budget, his budget, anyone's budget in the city.
It's more of a workload issue. If all of a sudden there were 20 development agreements to work on because there were 20 churches interested in doing this, it's just how many can we work on at any given time, given that we have development agreements for Sound Transit, the LDS Church, the Commons Mall, Kitt's Corner. There's a number of development agreements rolling right now. And so what this looks like is we will probably meet with these guys once every month or two to sit down and talk through details. And at some point, we'll cobble something together and go see if there's a builder interested. So to Councilmember McDaniel's question earlier, a development agreement can be 3 pages or it can be 300 pages or more. And depending on how complicated it is, obviously affects how much staff time is put into it. I don't even know, I mean, this may be, if there's no deviations from code, it may be the city's willing to put $30,000 in on our expertise. The church is willing to put their property in at a certain price, and a builder's willing to buy it and build X number of housing units for ownership at blank AMI. That's probably like 5 pages. So, I mean, I just don't know, because we have not done this yet, in terms of knowing how labor intensive this work is going to be. I mean, in theory, probably most of it's on Kent, because we're going down a construct that's a little bit abnormal, given the fact that the city's in the middle of a private land deal between the church and a builder.
So the Lutheran Church on 21st with the garden, that is,
Yes.
the property sold, do they have a development agreement, or it's just going straight to developers?
So developers have it under contract. They email us like 14 times a day. So I'm not sure I'm spending less time with them than I will with these guys. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I've literally had 4 emails from them today. And that's not necessarily unusual. So they're exploring, a lot of things have changed with the adoption of the middle housing code and the unit lot subdivision. So the first people through that gate, trying to figure out how it works, there's a lot of questions. And so, there's just a lot of, I think we're kind of in an evolutionary point in a way. And so I think, no, they don't have a development agreement, but we are still spending a ton of staff time with them, trying to get them to figure out if they want to do cottages or townhouses.
So is the zoning there set up so that the zoning doesn't have to be changed?
Nobody's talking about changing the zoning.
No, but they could build without having to change the zoning?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, I was just going to say, back to Susan had concerns about the cities, the $30,000, $34,000 whatsoever. Once again, I think that it's really, if we want to be able to have some housing that's affordable, that people can actually, young couples or retired people downsizing or whatever else, want to be able to purchase in an affordable way, that they can actually do it. I think that we need to make sure that the costs are being minimized at all levels. And that $34,000 split among 20 lots, that may not be all that much, but I mean, we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of all the different places where we can reduce costs. The city, the church, the builder, whoever else. Because in the end, it's not just a win-win-win for the city, win for the church, win for the builder. The most important thing, it's win for the ultimate purchaser who's actually able to buy a home at a reasonable cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, based on what I heard from Councilmember Honda, I'm going to offer an alternative. Since you mentioned earlier that we never been in this situation before, so it's just an idea. How about we not outright waiving the fee, but we defer that fee until the church actually sold the property to the developer, at which point they will pay us back with that money. And the reason I said that is, all the council members are fully aware we are currently in the red in terms of money, right? And since I'm a chair of that committee, I know exactly where the money is going. So that's one way for us to capture this expenditure in the future that doesn't cost the church right at this moment. Or the other option is, instead of taking back that $33,000 in the future, depending on how many units that we build, we might divvy up that amount of money and help with the homeowners or potential homeowner as a down payment, as a gift to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not gonna,
Could we do that?
Kent didn't cringe at the word gift, but I'm gonna say,
I don't think that's.
I'm gonna say that one, if the council wants to ask that in the development agreement, there is a provision that the permit fee for the development agreement is part of the land sale. I'm fine with that. If these gentlemen say that's fine, then we all have an agreement that we will craft that into the development agreement when we write it. The other choice, hang on for 1 second. The other choice is if you guys defer or waive the $34,000, it can be with the expectation that I can hear and make sure I write into the development agreement that the purchase price for every house will be X amount of dollars less than what it otherwise would, so that it works out to be that way. I'm not going to use the word gift. And so I think you could do it either way. I think the easier way, I'd rather not get involved with like kind of the builder to that level. But as part of like, if he's writing a check for $1.7 million for the property, and he has to write a check for 1.734, and we get the 34, that seems like an easier way to do it. But I'm gonna let Kent talk because he's had his light on.
So I think it's the first option is probably fine legally. The second one's a little more questionable. It's something we'd have to look into a little bit more to provide a definitive answer. I think the key piece to understand here is that if council's determination is to waive the DA fee at this point, we have no certainty that anyone will agree in the future to repaying that. The only way that could occur is through some sort of agreement that's signed right now, or it be agreed to at a later date through the DA. But otherwise, there's no certainty that we could ever necessarily recoup that. Of course, we might have the good word of the church, but that's all it would be. It wouldn't be a legally binding commitment at this point.
Thank you.
Councilman
So I think I speak for Eric in that all things are possible right now in terms of the agreement. Whether it's deferred, whether it's put into some other format of reducing what we get from the developer, I think all those things are open to conversation as long as it's presented to us and we can all talk about it. And then we as a congregation can vote on it, and that we have answers for the folks who ask questions. Some of you may need to come to our congregational meeting, but you're welcome. We're close. You know where we are.
Okay, Councilman McDaniel?
Yeah, we've been talking about, so I'm gonna go back to it. Keith, can you step forward real quick? If we decide to waive this project we do when we move forward with this development agreement, looking at the other potential locations and churches that we've talked to, would this be literally a kind of, almost a cookie cutter where we could take literally best learn and move forward with them?
So every church, like any private property owner, is going to have their own personalities, right? So I can't say that they necessarily would unfold the same way, but I think the answer is, our expectation is yes, it would. So I see this as a pilot. That was the other thing that I was thinking of. Yeah, we could waive the 34 and call it a pilot project so that not necessarily everybody else gets the same give. Because I think what we're going to do is we're going to kind of bump into walls and do stuff. We have to figure out how do we solicit builders bring them into the kitchen and have conversations with them. So there's a lot of creating wheels with this process that once we've done this and see what works well and what doesn't, it should become way more efficient as we do this for version 2.0 and then 3.0 after that.
Gotcha. And then is the 34 a set number for development agreements? Or
Yes.
Is it, okay.
And we came up with that number based on an average of medium-sized ones and big ones and the amount of staff time that goes into it. I mean, it was just a matter of trying to recoup some of our staff costs.
Understood. And is a 1 acre plot or parcel the same as a 5 on a development agreement, the time and energy that's put into it?
a lot of it is personalities of property owners and how much they want to be in kind of tweaking things. It's also like how many deviations from city code there's going to be. Can't imagine we're going to do any deviations from code here, maybe one, I don't know. And so I think the fact that it's fairly pretty simple. Now, it may very well be that we sit down with a builder and they're like, yeah, I'm willing to do this, but I want my preliminary plat in the development agreement so that when it's done, I can go straight to construction drawings and final plat and building permits. Like, that becomes a little bit more complicated, obviously. That's more staff time, that's more work. So part of this and trying to figure out how this plays out, I don't have all the answers just yet, but 1 acre, 5 acres, bless you. The only thing that would make it more complicated is if there were critical areas embedded in that, because then not only are you dealing with the size of the property, but if there's a wetland or a stream or something that needs a critical area study with experts reviewing it, that makes that much more complicated.
I get that part. I like the idea. My idea on this one is they're the first ones to come into this with us, so I would be willing to, even though I'm really tight on the budget like you guys are, I'd be willing to waive this one just because they came to us to work this plan out. And I think there's a replicatable project here that can be done in more than one location on the city, so that's my 2 cents. Thanks again for you guys stepping up for this one.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So if a developer is listening to this meeting and says, oh, maybe I'm interested, and they go talk to you guys at the church, they wouldn't necessarily need a development agreement. A development agreement is something that is tying the city and the church to a certain things that we want, what they want. But a developer doesn't necessarily need a development agreement. If someone were to come in and say they're interested in building these homes, they don't need a development agreement.
They don't. But I think the reason why, what I generally look at is if things are going to happen, the market will have them happen naturally. And so we have the one church where Soundbuild's looking at, the one with the pea patch.
Yeah, Christ, the Lutheran Church.
Yes.
Light of Christ.
So Light of Christ. So that one's happening on its own because, and it actually didn't happen on its own. It happened because Jack and I went to Master Builders and made a presentation about development on church properties. And one of the builders that was there asked for our data that we had collected on churches in Federal Way. And so we gave them our data, and then they went out and contacted Light of Christ Church. So we already put that first project together, even though it wasn't with a development agreement. In this case, what I'm looking at is they don't have builders knocking on their doorstep right now. And so what the city's going to do is we're going to try and facilitate that marriage. So I think that's the reason why I think this is worthwhile, is I think it moves the needle from it's not happening on its own to we will make it happen.
And one just additional thing, I think this has already been said, but just to be very clear about this, if a developer came in tomorrow to build this project and there was no development agreement, that just went through the standard permitting process, there's no way that the city could guarantee that those homes would be for sale, for owner-occupied homes. The only way that we can assure that would be through a development agreement. So that's kind of the big one.
So I thought Light of Christ had like 6 developers interested in their property. When I talked with the folks at the church, that's what.
You can only put one under contract at any given time.
Right, but I thought they had 6 that were interested.
I don't know if that is true. We handed out our research to, I think 4 or 5 different home builders asked us to send them our data sheets.
So my other question is, let's say a property owner not connected to a church has property that they would be willing to sell to have affordable housing. Would we waive, and they wanted a development agreement, would we waive the development agreement for them?
I don't know. I mean, so that would be part of the negotiation, I think.
Okay.
We can talk more about this offline, but there's some legal ramifications as well in terms of gift of public funds as to what type of entities are providing housing and in what manner. So there's some considerations there as well that need to be thought through
Well,
in the context
right.
of a non-church providing the property.
But if the church sells the property to a developer, they're not providing the housing then. The developer is building the housing.
Yeah, the timing of things could matter to that question, to your point, right? So if it's sold before anything is executed, that might make it different legally than if it was sold after execution, for instance.
So I don't want, it kind of sounded like one of the jocks says it, kind of thinks that I don't want affordable housing. Of course I want affordable housing built in Federal Way.
I don't think we
I
said
just,
that.
well, it kind of.
I'm just
It
listening.
kind of, I'm just concerned that we are being fair to anyone who might want to come and to the city and have this same proposal if they're not a church. I just want to make sure that we are covering all of our bases there. Because there might be somebody out there who has, a bunch of property that they don't need anymore, and they would like to sell to a developer to build housing. And I'd like to have the same options open to someone like that if we're going to open it, give the option to these folks. I just want to make sure we are being fair to anyone in the city who has the same idea.
So I think, and I'm going to probably walk out on a limb that's going to break. So there is in statute, affordable housing is identified as a public benefit in statute. And, I'm going to draw a little nuance to what you just said, council member, because, a property owner making their property available for housing is not the same as a property owner making their property available for affordable housing. So as long as there is an affordable component to it, there's at least a public benefit that we can connect to in terms of making policy decisions from the dais that's maybe beneficial to this. So
Oh, I would agree. It would have to be affordable.
Okay, and so I think that as long as we're talking about somebody wanting to do an affordable housing project, that is clearly supported by our comprehensive plan. There's many things that we can then tether to say that it justifies us maybe making a permitting fee compensation of some kind.
That would be what I'm trying to get at. I just think we need to be fair on the table for everyone.
Sure.
Who might be interested. I mean, you guys could go back to your congregation and they might say, we don't really want to do this. I mean, we don't know where you're going to end up at. I mean, you probably know where you might end up at, but, I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome to use property that you're not using, and it's in a perfect location. It's right next to a couple schools, so, thank you.
So if I can make a comment, go right ahead.
I just have a quick thing to say. I think we're looking at this as a three-leg stool, and the presence of Federal Way in this is as important as selling the land and building the housing, because it's a witness to the rest of the county and the region that we want to see jurisdictions participating in this kind of activity. And sure, we could go sell it. I'm not looking forward to anything like that. It would be a nightmare. But at the same time, I think for me at least, it's a three-legged stool. I've worked with cities too long that didn't even want to talk about affordable projects. And I actually live in Auburn. I joined this church because it's part of my denomination, the nearest one. But like I said, I'm very proud of the city that you're talking about this, that you came to us and to other congregations. And I'll speak for myself that I'll go to the other congregations and help be an advocate when and if you get down the road that far.
Mr. Walsh, did you have something before?
Yeah, I would just like to say, maybe what we could do is with this, we could waive the $32,754 with it being a pilot project. And then later on, if more things come, we can decide whether we want to, make that a standard thing, or it was just this one pilot project right now.
Well, I'll just comment, this is a pilot project to bring in affordable housing, if we can, to Federal Way, which is an economic development project because we put property on the tax rolls and we have home ownership for people who can't afford to buy a house right now because our average rate is 600,000. I come up with the number I do because in Texas, they're building houses all day long for $300,000 a copy. It's a different world, land's cheaper, I get all that. But if we can do, as a city, anything that we can to drive the cost of development out and think like a manufacturer instead of a house builder, and think of all the components that comes into it, which will go into a development agreement, we can drive cost out of the price so somebody can buy one. And then we have to just make sure it stays affordable for purchase so people can get into the American dream of getting generational wealth, like we all did, because they own a house that they can afford on the salaries they make now. So this is not this decision, and I'm going to argue for it because I've been working on it a long time. This decision could be life-changing in our city. We don't know how it's going to work. We may become the blueprint for every other city in King County to follow. We have enough churches in town with enough land that you can actually, I think, Keith, we did 600 houses. I think that's the number we came up with, which we aren't going to build, but there could be 600 affordable housings. And what Susan brings up, if a developer or somebody owns land that's got 5 acres and say, hey, we want to be part of getting affordable housing for people, let's figure out how to make it part of it. This is not just for a church. This is for the 103,000 people that live in Federal Way that can't buy a house, the ones that can't buy a house, the older ones who want to downsize into something smaller to free up a bigger house so somebody can buy it so somebody else can buy in. I mean, this is our opportunity as a city to be different and do what we can to make affordable housing. So I hope we pass this to go forward, and then we'll figure out all the things that happen after we get to the starting block. Thank you.
I'd like to point out real quick, this is one of the
Daniel.
few things where the city's not actually having to put money out. We're just not collecting money. It's just Keith's time that's being used. So I appreciate you, Keith, putting out your time like that.
Is that, do you know, since you've talked or you've had emails from the developers at the Lutheran Church, are they putting affordable housing in there? Do you
No.
know? Is it housing like across the street that was recently built? The housing right across the street from that location is, their larger homes are probably 600,000-700,000.
The housing type on Light of Christ Church property is still up in the air. The builder who's got it under contract is looking at either cottages or townhouses. And they will have different price points depending on which housing type they will, but there's no, so there, other than what's in code now, which says if you're doing more than 25 units, you got to do 4% inclusionary. So there will be some affordable, but it's going to be a small percentage of the total number of housing units that get built on that property.
How many units are going in there?
We don't know that yet.
To subdivide the property, what is the cost for this property?
The subdivision fee, I don't have that in front of me. I don't know. We're not waiving that.
Okay, that was my next question. All right, thank you.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we, let's see.
I can make the motion.
Go ahead.
Okay. I move to forward the request to the November 18, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time, and now we'll go to item H.
Good evening, council members. I'm making this presentation on behalf of Brian Davis. My boss would like me to say that this is not a presentation on behalf of the legal department of the city. It is on behalf of Brian Davis. What we have before you tonight is the policy question of whether to accept a grant from the Office of Public Defense for the year of 2026 and then half of the following year, 2027. These grants, the full amount of the grant is just over $50,000. It works out to about $33,000 per year on an annualized basis. These are competitive grants that are authorized by state statute under RCW 10-101. They're grants that are for the purpose of improving the quality of public defense services in Washington municipalities like ours. The grants can only be used for certain things. Notably, to our municipal court, they can be used to provide social work services or sentencing mitigation as part of public defense representation. They can also provide interpreter services or be used to fund providing interpreter services in some instances. And also, they're allowed to be used to add investigative services for the court as well. That's pretty much all I have in terms of a presentation. I'm open to any questions with respect to this. There's no match on behalf of the city. It's just whether we want to accept the money for those purposes or not.
Councilmember Honda.
Would there be a reason we wouldn't want to accept this money?
I believe that's a question for the members of the people on the dais.
I mean, no.
Council.
I mean, no, is there a downside to, I don't see a downside to accepting the money.
Staff does not see a downside to accepting the
Okay.
money,
I
any
mean-
downside whatsoever.
All right, then it's pretty simple.
Council McDaniel.
Yeah, where do the funds go? They go to general, they go to courts, do they go, where?
I don't know the answer to that. I believe they go straight to the court, though.
Okay, and do you know what our current public defense costs are per year? I know they're gonna change, but.
I might be able to. I think it's in just north of 600,000, if I remember, almost 700,000. Don't quote me on that. That could be off, but I believe that that's the correct figure. It's around the 700,000.
And this may or may not be able to be used against that, depending on what we need the use for.
So many of the things that this grant is anticipated to fund are things that we are already doing in the court. So it's not adding additional stuff on top of what the court's already doing. It's just essentially funding programs that the court currently administers, like, for instance, the interpreters and social work services and sentencing mitigation.
Gotcha. Last question, was this put in as part of the budget, or was this something that's now on top of the budget?
I do not know the answer to that question either. Similar to the last time we did this with the SPAR grant 2 months ago, I'll get back to you or have Brian get back to you with the answer to that question.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I move to forward option 1 to the November 18, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to item J, ordinance, Fat Beam LLC franchise. This is the longest time you've sat here for a while, huh?
Sure, certainly has. Good evening, Commission. I am Leonard Spadoni with Public Works Development Services. I am presenting Fat Beam Fiber as an option for a franchise in the city of Federal Way. The policy before us tonight is, should the city of Federal Way grant Fat Beam LLC a franchise to place fiber telecommunications and related appendages within and throughout the city of Federal Way. Background information, Fat Beam LLC requested a franchise from the city of Federal Way to place fiber optic cables and appendices in the city right-of-way. Fat Beam Fiber has paid the $5,000 deposit for administration and staff time. The terms of the franchise is for a period of 10 years, commencing on the effective day of the approved franchise, which is consistent with the franchise grants and other utilities. Options to consider: recommend adoption of the proposed Fat Beam LLC franchise ordinance and forward to the City Council for first reading. Option 2, do not adopt the proposed ordinance and provide direction to staff. The mayor's recommendation is to forward the Fat Beam LLC franchise ordinance to the City Council meeting on November 18th for first reading. I'm happy to answer questions.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, how many fiber franchises are there so far?
So far this year, we've had 3, maybe 4 that have asked for and granted ordinances. I don't know what our total number is. It seems to be a push for. We have another couple that are coming behind. We're reviewing and working through an agreement with at least one more, and I think one is asked for information.
So do the different ones, do they generally do different areas of the city, or are they doing the same areas? I mean, how's it all? Do we
Currently,
coordinate it? Do they coordinate it? How's that all done?
They do the coordination of how they want to come in and what is their, how they're getting in, what's a lot of them, the current one that I know of that just is asked for a permit, which we approved earlier this year for a franchise, was Hyperfiber and it's down at the bottom of Pack Highway at Dash Point and 18th that kind of diagonals off. There's a main trunk line that comes in there. They're all kind of looking, we have one of them, one of the other ones that we just recently approved is on the south end, kind of putting out feelers to the community. I think a lot of it depends on how they pencil out their unit costs to get their feet on board and how they have to lay it out. But it seems to be a push for, at least in our area, of getting more and more technological access. Not knowing what the unit price and how their companies work to get it through and get all the costs, because I know building costs can skyrocket, but going through infrastructure that they can kind of bootleg through may help them. I'm sure with everything going with all the remote work facilities and with the AI and even the remote concerns, it seems to be the push.
So so I mean, are they doing conduit? So I mean, with all of these, I would suspect that, they have a 10-year franchise. I would suspect that 10 years from now, half of the companies won't even be in existence anymore. I mean, that's the way, things are with tech. Are they doing conduit that somebody else will be able to use that same conduit, or how,
I know one of them is piggybacking with, I think, Ziply, coming in on what they have already. Some of them are doing conduits where they do bores and pushes for, that is a smaller conduit, usually between 1.5 and 2 inches in diameter, because fiber optic is small. But they're working at getting their skeleton of the framework. I'm sure that a bunch of it is going to depend on how much interest they get. I talked to one of my cohorts who is a citizen of Federal Way, and he said that they've been papering the whole community, and they have looking for interest in getting initial, I don't say $10 is a buy-in, but that's to make interest. They are asking for money.
Yeah, I know that we're getting lots of stuff, I think, from Ziply. I think it is that, every other day we get something from them, so. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So I was going to ask how many franchises we've had for fiber. So if somebody wanted to be in the same neighborhood, let's say, isn't it easy? Is it?
Oh, Easy Fiber.
Yeah.
Easy Fiber.
If they wanted to be in the same neighborhood as another organization, another company, could they?
Correct, they could. And you'll see it, I'm sure that there's going to be a business model like cell phones, that you'll have multi-people on one tower. You'll have multiple fiber on an overlash pole or into a utility corridor. But I'm sure that it's going to all boil down to how many prospective clients they'll get to see if they go. I know one of them that is just looking at coming in, and the Hyperfiber, I think it is down in Ocean Shores, because we've talked to a few of their development engineers down there on working with and different things that you might come across with permits and that one and whatnot.
So I've talked with the Easy with their representatives as they walk around the city, as I walked around the city, and their representatives tell me they have a permit here in Federal Way, do they?
They have an ordinance, but they have not come in and gotten a right-of-way permit to install yet.
So they wait until they have so many customers before they do that?
Basically is what it looks like to me. Hyperfiber kind of, they're the only ones I know that have an active that we're reviewing for an actual right-of-way permit. But we have, it is AT&T, but they've changed, it's a subsidiary or a LLC that's coming in, and we're working with their, working through the agreement. I think a lot of them depends on their work and also their manpower to bring in the facilities.
So I've seen this one company in the Marine Hills area, and I've seen them all the way down south. So do they, if they decide that they go after a permit, do they just do it per neighborhood, or do they do it for the whole city?
But we try to limit that we don't scatter too long, because we had a problem a couple years ago where we had a overabundance of right-of-way. I think it was over 5,000 feet. They weren't cleaning up after themselves, and so we try to, when they first come in, we try to limit it so that it's kind of get to know what your practice is, what your abilities, how you're cleaning up behind you. Are we leaving the residents with a unsightly mess, or are we cleaning up and they're a good steward of their facilities? So we try to limit it.
So you limit it to one neighborhood at a time?
Yes, we don't want them to scatter all over. We kind of look at even that we don't get 30,000 feet of cable stretched out, not really finished on the ends. It's really easy in the construction to do the big hit in the middle, and it's all the tie-in stuff that becomes the slow and whatever, the unsightliness. And so we kind of we limit it at the beginning to see what they're really capable of, because everyone will say everything to get your business.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on November 18, 2025.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now go to item K, which is sign cone amendments. This was a lot of paper.
Yes, it is. Good evening, committee and council members. Keith Niven again, Community Development Director. So, sign code at 7:07. So the sign code is the piece of city code that nobody wants to ever touch. Because everybody either loves signs or they hate signs. There's really not a middle ground. And so there's a reason we haven't updated our sign code since 2008, because everybody's afraid of it. So here we are. I'm going to go through this. So policy question in front of the city council. Should the city council approve the proposed sign code amendments relating to the city sign code? Why the update? Whoa. Kind of some weird stuff on my slide. We are going to try and make it consistent with state statutes and federal statutes, simplify and clarify, clean up, and then add some new stuff. I don't know, that's that black stuff in there. I got to fix that before full council. Why the update? So there was a Supreme Court decision, Reed versus the town of Gilbert, which is in Arizona, for those of you who don't know that. And it dealt with content neutrality, and I'll explain that in a bit. Simplify, clarify, clean up, and then add some new things. Primarily responsive to community input. We did not propose wholesale changes to the sign code, which is why you don't see 40 angry people sitting in the audience right now, because if we were going to take anything away, they would be here. In Reed versus the town of Gilbert, Arizona, which was a 2015 Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court held that the temporary non-commercial sign regulations of the local sign code violated the First Amendment because they were content-based and did not survive strict scrutiny. So this little sign here from Gilbert, Arizona, I know there's a lot of grass there, but that's a palm tree. So this is Arizona. that's for a Presbyterian church, and the church did not have their own sanctuary. And so what they did was they put these signs out in the right-of-way that told their congregation where their Sunday services were going to be. They might be at an elementary school, they might be at some other community building, but they kept moving, and they needed these signs to tell their congregation where to go. So what the town of Gilbert said was, you can't have those signs in the right-of-way. And the church said, well, wait a second, that sign on the left, how is it worse than that sign on the right, which you do allow in the right-of-way? And so the Supreme Court basically said, you know what, you're right. What the heck? Like, this one's not any worse than that one, and yet you're saying that this one's allowed and that one's not. And so that is basically, if you have to read the content of the sign to know whether it's allowed, your sign code is illegal, which is the way our sign code reads right now. Like, it basically says you can put an election sign here, but you can't put potentially a house cleaning sign here. So this is the thing that we needed to do. This was the number one thing we needed to do with this sign code update, was make it content neutral. Treat all signs basically the same, that were these temporary signs in the right-of-way was primarily the ones that were important. So the second thing we're doing is simplifying. So this is the table of contents of our current sign code. Everything with the red line in it has been deleted. Some of it was redundant, some of it was just hard to navigate, and so part of what we did was to make this more streamlined and hopefully easier for both applicants and staff to implement, because right now our sign code's kind of horrific. The third thing was to clarify. So one of the things that this updated sign code says is, hey, these things right here, these are not signs. Flags for the United States, or big flags for our country, are not signs. Murals are not signs. Gravestones are not signs. Catenary festival lights are not signs. Those things you can just put up without a permit. It's an okay thing. We are moving on to changes. So one thing that we're proposing now, here's where we have some discretion, okay? So we have, and part of this was informed by some outreach that we did, and I'll get to that slide later on. But the proposal that's in front of you is to treat non-commercial signs and commercial signs the same. In other words, this sign that says, "Congratulations, Gettysburg High School graduates," I don't think should be regulated any different than this podiatrist sign. Pediatric, sorry, it's getting late. And you may disagree with that, and if so, then we've got to rewrite some of this draft code, but basically what we're saying
Keith,
is...
if you end up getting a podiatrist and a pediatric, you might end up with your foot in your mouth.
Thank you for that, council member. We're saying that temporary signs may be in place for 180 days, and we talked about that with the chamber, we talked about it with a number of groups, and came up with that as a reasonable expectation. And that A-frames can be year-long, but only during business hours. So the idea that somebody puts an A-frame out and leaves it there forever, that's not something that the code will allow. And
Can
we
I ask
talk
a
about
question,
that later.
Keith?
You want to?
Going back to that signs, are you saying that the dentist can have their sign like that for 180 days?
Yes.
In one place?
Yes.
So any sign, that goes in Federal Way can be there 180 days?
Yep.
Temporary sign.
Temporary.
Well, every election sign is a temporary sign.
So the ones that are related to specific events, like an election, those need to be taken down within 7 days after the event.
Okay.
So these aren't necessarily related to, you could say that the graduate's really a graduation ceremony, although it really doesn't say that, but you could claim that that's an event.
Mm-hmm.
But the pediatric one is clearly a business sign that's going to be out there for 180 days if we pass the code as drafted.
So, just for clarification, so we have an election next November, a year from now, so 6 months before that election, signs can go up? That's 180,
yes.
180 days before,
Yes.
like they everywhere in Federal Way right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that something we could change as a council?
Yes.
Yes, but there are some limitations on it. So courts have stricken down time limitations on temporary signs, like political signs. So there's a point, it can probably go lower than 180, but there's a point at which it gets too close to the election. Like, for instance, it can only be posted 4 weeks prior to the election, and no earlier would probably be illegal, for instance. So there's some wiggle room there, but we need to be careful about how narrow we make the window. After the election, you can pretty much take them away immediately, because there's very little concern about free speech rights as it pertains to campaigns once the election's over. So that window can be very short, but the window in front of it needs to be relatively long.
Could, for temporary signs like this, specifically political signs, could they be restricted to certain areas of the city?
So what you said right there was could we restrict political signs in
Yes, I did.
in a different way? And so that gets back to the original comment, which
Okay.
is we can't regulate these non-commercial temporary signs based on their content. That was an example of regulating a non-commercial temporary sign based on its content, because you had a regulation for a political sign, i.e. based on its content as a political sign.
So then any signs that are temporary, could we restrict them to certain areas of the city?
Yes, probably is the answer to that. Yes, it would have to be all non-commercial
Right.
temporary signs that we restricted in that way. And then again, and this gets very complicated from a legal perspective, there are certain areas of the city that you cannot prohibit political signs, therefore all non-commercial temporary signs from. So there are like some areas, for classic examples are planter strips and the sides of unimproved right-of-way. In other words, right-of-way where it's like road surface and then no curb and it's just grass. You can't do anything in those areas at all in the state of Washington in terms of prohibiting these types of signs.
So those signs could be allowed in the right-of-way?
Correct, yes. In fact, they have to be allowed in certain areas of the right-of-way. That it's a old, well, not that old, I guess, at this point. It's a mid-90s City of Tacoma decision that basically said you can't prohibit them in planter strips and the unimproved shoulder of streets without sidewalks, period, basically.
So a planter strip is defined as like the grass between the road, the sidewalk?
Correct, yeah,
And the
exactly. It's roadway, and then you've got the planter strip, and then you've got the sidewalk. It's that area in between.
And you could put a temporary sign in that space?
You
Yes.
have to allow
Oh,
temporary signs in
So
that
the only
place.
place we're
For
precluding
180,
them
for 180
is,
days.
is in the median or in a roundabout. So right now, the draft code says you can put them, so there's rules about putting them in right away. They still have to meet certain safety requirements in terms of visibility and other stuff. But they can be in the planter strip. They just can't be in like a median or a roundabout.
so I have one more question. So in this current election, we've had 2 politicians who've had their signs out since early March. Would the city then have gone to them and said, you can't do this until 6 months before the election? Or is it 6 months before the primary election and then 6 months before the November election?
That first one,
The first one?
yeah.
Yeah, that's a year, yeah. That's a long time.
Can we charge a rental fee for signs?
You can, it's your right
Okay,
away.
so we could go $5 a sign for 180 days?
Probably not.
Probably not. I mean,
Try to find money.
I'm just thinking, that's a great revenue source.
Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. We can always come back to questions. So more changes. Right now, we don't allow signs in residential zones. So if you had a home-based business, you can't have a sign for it. And so what this would allow is small signs like this window sign and this blade sign to identify where those home businesses are.
And is that because of the Supreme Court rulings?
No, that was just, we heard that from a number of people in our community that felt like there should be small businesses that should be allowed to have some signage.
That came up a few weeks ago.
So we could say, no, this doesn't fit in
Yeah,
federal.
you could say no to this.
Okay.
Yep, that's
So-
completely a policy, George.
All of these, most of these things that are other changes, you guys can say, no, put it back, and that's fine. So this is, right now, our code won't allow these type of signs. So these signs above canopies are deemed to be above a roof line and therefore not allowed. And so we're making a specific provision that you can have a canopy sign above the canopy, as long as there's building behind it. So it's not technically above a roof line. And that was a request made by the Commons.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Why would what is the reasoning for not on the roof line?
Because of the aesthetic impact of that. If you're putting a sign above a roof, it can then be seen from multiple sides. It becomes part of the skyline, so to speak, of the city. And so right now, our code doesn't allow it. And so I've not heard from, and again, we'll get to a slide that says of all the people we talked to, nobody asked for there to be signs above the roof line.
Okay, just wondering.
Yep. But they did ask for them to go above the canopy. All right, more changes. We had once upon a time a comprehensive sign permit, and then we deleted that section of code. We're suggesting bringing it back because we think there's some value to getting some of these bigger commercial properties to think about their signs as kind of a holistic design package. And so there's some benefits to the property owners for doing this, but we think there's some benefits to the city to allow it. So again, nobody may do this at any given time. This may just be a crazy idea by staff. But we're going to go ahead and try and suggest putting it back in because we think that there could be some better designs from signage for some of these multi-tenant retail properties that we have quite a few of. More changes. Right now, the sign code says you can have a freeway-oriented freestanding sign, and none of our businesses that have signage that faces I-5 is freestanding. It's all wall-mounted. And so because of that, and here's a picture of Jet Chevrolet and the Courtyard by Marriott, we just changed the code to be specific that a business gets an extra sign so long as it's wall-mounted and facing the freeway, if it's visible from the freeway. So outreach. So here's the thing is, and the reason why we don't have a lot of people here is because we spent a lot of time outreaching to people we thought had an interest in our sign code. And so, you know, we had a briefing and a public hearing with the Planning Commission. We talked to the Chamber of Commerce. Many of you were at that meeting where that was quite a while ago. We talked to the Pavilion Center, Hillside Plaza. Finwater Advisors is a sign company. Sam Pace is with the Association of Realtors. As you know, residential real estate have an interest in signs. Walmart, The Crossings, The Commons, Celebration Center, SeaTac Village, and Pavilion Center 2. So we talked to all these people and said, hey, we're changing our sign code. What do you want to see that's different than what's in there now? And we've incorporated kind of most of all that input that we got. So as we talk about with all of our code amendments for Title 19, there's criteria in the city code that we need to meet. We believe that these code amendments meet all of those criteria. Recommendation, Planning Commission recommends approval of the proposed sign code amendments. Mayor also recommends approval of the proposed sign code amendments. And I'm here for questions.
I have one question on the well, I got a couple, but
On the A-frames?
The A-frames.
Uh-huh.
So my understanding is an A-frame, you can put it out, but it only is for business hours.
Yep.
So there happens to be one that I don't have any objection to, but it sits on Dash Point Road.
I know about that one.
Yeah, it's by, by a telephone pole.
Yep.
So if we make this pass this sign code, they would have to take that down at what time?
So we say that the earliest those can be out is 9 a.m.
So,
So if we get a complaint about an A-frame staying up overnight, as you know, code compliance doesn't work generally past 5 o'clock. But they are in before 9 o'clock. And so what they'll do is they'll go out, and if it's out there at 8:30, then they'll pick it up.
and is there a sign jail where they pay to get it out?
There is a sign jail, actually, across the street over
Okay.
there
Same
somewhere.
sign jail as in the 1990s, huh?
Yep. So, yeah. And then we keep the signs for a certain period of time. If people come and get them, great. If not, then they get recycled or destroyed, depending on what their material is.
Okay, so this new code would, all those A-frames can be out there for all year, but they have to only be out from 9 to what, 6 or something like that?
9 to 7, maybe.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a distinction. The regulations are a little bit different if it's a A-frame on private property as opposed to in the right-of-way. When it's on private property, it's as many days per year as you want.
Right, okay, private
And-
property, I could see that.
And it's
They own-
business hours.
And they,
Yeah.
Business hours, whether that be 6 AM or whether that be, 10:30 AM start. In the right-of-way, it's 180 days max per year, and it's 9 AM to close of business.
So if they
Close
go
of their
180
business?
days and then take it down for 10 days, do they get another 180 or?
It's
is it-
180 per calendar year.
Okay, so it's only half.
Correct. And that's right-of-way specifically.
And a sign with a stick that you put whatever the sign is and pound it in the ground, that's
In-
365 days?
If that is a temporary sign, which it
Yes.
probably is, then in right-of-way, that is also going to be 180 days.
Oh, it's 180 days only, okay. Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, so with those temporary signs, I mean, if it's 180 days, they have the sign here. 179 days later, they move it over here. I mean, is there,
He said.
How many
that's
feet?
still, I mean,
So can you use the system? Sure. Like, you can absolutely use the system if you want. So part of this is, we heard from, I pitched some different ideas out there, and I heard no, resounding no, like only maybe capping the number of temporary signs in front of any property. And like I heard, no, everybody's got their political sign at First and 320th. You can't just like limit them to 2, right? So like we had these conversations, and so as much as you guys are kind of recoiling on a thought of sign pollution, which I appreciate, we can always change the sign code if we feel like this is too loose. And if ultimately people are using the system to manipulate it, like moving it 10 feet every 180 days, it means they've at least read the sign code and know they need to do that. That'll be a glass half full for me. Or we can put something less than 180 days. Again, I think that if you guys want to go 90, that's fine. That's significantly less than what I think has been floated through Planning Commission. I'd probably need to go back and do some other stuff if we're going to dial it back that far.
Yeah, so 60 days has been ruled to be unconstitutional, FYI.
Okay.
So 60 days or less is clearly not okay. After that, it becomes risky up to a certain point. So we can discuss if there's a specific number that council has in mind, and we can see what we think risk-wise about that in terms of its constitutionality. But anything 60 days or less is clearly not okay.
Lydia?
Yeah, so you said calendar year, so it could go from June to June then, since it's into a different calendar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilman McDaniel?
Yeah, I'm glad you guys brought up some of these comments. Back in July, I shot an email out to these two on this one, and I bluntly said the same thing. I find political signs to be an eyesore and pretty much visual pollution. And my questions then were the same thing, is can we limit how many? They said no. Can we limit where? No. But the when factor is a gray area I really like, to see if we can actually squeeze it down, because realistically, if this goes through, you'll probably see signs that I'll put up, they're business related and like that, because I will push this boundary. So I think we should really put a cap on it before it gets out there too far. and I like the 90 days as a possibility. I mean, if you really need your signs up 90 days, kind of evens the playing field for, in certain areas, and I can't imagine needing a sign up for 160 days that is not designed for lasting 180 days, so that was it on that one. And then the other question I had is, when I was reading through it, there's a lot of strikeouts, and then just repositioning them.
Yeah.
Is that just to make it easier to read or put everything in one chunk? Because that was the biggest thing I saw, was a lot of repositioning of stuff.
Yeah, it's consolidation, and it's also creating like cleaner buckets for people to look for. Like if I'm looking for an exempt sign now, there's a clear place to go that says exempt signs. You know, because most people are like, do I need a permit for this? And like I can read through that list of signs and say, what I want to do is not here. That must mean I need to go and get a permit somewhere. So a lot of it is just clarifying.
We also renumbered and reordered quite a bit within the sections.
So you moved one,
Yes.
threw everything off.
There's a bunch of them like that where it's like, it used to be section 150 and now it's section 70.
Yeah.
Or something like that, which has caused additional strike through.
Okay. And my other question, how many pages were you guys able to shave off for this then?
Probably at least 30%.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Yeah, less is more.
In my world, thanks.
Councilmember Honda?
Thanks. So I have several questions. One, why 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the, what do you call them? A-frames.
And sorry, it's 9 AM to close of business.
Yeah.
I couldn't
To
quite hear
close-
what your question was before, but
okay.
yeah, 9 AM to close of business in the right-of-way, business hours on private property.
So
the
if their business opens at 7 a.m., that's not allowed, that they could have their sign out?
In the right-of-way, but they could have it
On private property.
on their own property, you know, right next to the right-of-way. They could have that out at 6 AM, whenever their business opens.
So the reason we're doing the 9 AM is to give the city the opportunity to do some compliance if they're just setting them out there all night long.
I would rather support the business if it needs to be their business hours. I think it should be allowed during their business hours, my opinion. Secondly, can we have a cap on the number of signs per business or political person has out? Is that legal?
No, because you have to read them to know that you've exceeded the number.
And I think, I'm going to guess that the next question will be, could we have a cap on the number of non-commercial temporary signs regardless of type? Probably not, is the answer. Maybe we could try to craft something like that, but it's going to be, I think, Councilmember McDaniel's in receipt of a response to a similar question that I gave him, which is almost all of these regulations that tangentially affect political signs are going to be likely to be tossed by a court if we're in court over it.
Okay.
So
Could signs, temporary signs, be put on poles like they are in other cities around the country? You know,
No.
like they're stapled onto a pole?
No, you can't. That's called a snipe sign. You can't attach it to anything in the right of way.
But other cities do, they allow that then?
I believe there are some cities who allow those in certain instances, but again, I'm not sure definitively, so we might have to
Our
look into-
current code does not allow that.
Correct.
And I don't think we think that's a good idea to allow private parties to attach their signage to our street signposts, utility cabinets, other things that are in the right of way.
Just asking.
Yeah.
And then, what would be the fine for someone who has their sign out too soon or doesn't take their sign down on time, or whatever we find code compliance is not happy with? What is the fine? And then my next.
It's like $3. It's
First violation, $5 per sign, subsequent violations, $7 per sign.
So I know that the code used to say, I don't know if it's still set, if this would still say it. It used to say, at least for political signs, because I know I've been, this has happened to me before, that code compliance had to take a picture of where the sign was. And then when they took the sign, they had to show me the picture of why it was wrong. And if they didn't have a photo of it, they could not charge me for the sign. Is that still in the, are we keeping that in there?
So I'm looking at the code now, and I believe that what you just described was a practice that the city has had, but I don't think it's actually written into the code currently.
Okay.
So I think that's open, it's an open question about whether that would continue or not. I don't know, Keith, if you have any opinions on that, but it's not in code right now, so I think that was just a administrative/enforcement practice that we've developed and used over time.
I think generally speaking, the guys who pick up the signs are generally not code compliance. They're generally the graffiti guys and shopping cart guys. And they're trying to not be the bad guys. And so my guess is if anybody contested them picking up a sign, they would probably just give it back. I think they do take photos when they do pick up signs because people tend to get unhappy when their signs get picked up by city staff. So I think they do try to create a process so that they can demonstrate that, look, this one was, we saw in a site visibility triangle and that's why we picked it up. Or it was out. I mean, all the candidates got noticed that their signs would be picked up on the 12th if they weren't already picked up by the city.
So my next question is, if someone takes a sign on a stick or a pole, or, you know, whatever, temporary sign, and it doesn't belong to them, and they're caught, is there a fine for that?
Caught by whom?
Oh, I don't know, someone driving by who says, hey, you know, this person I saw taking your signs, is there, signs go missing all the time. Businesses tell me they're missing their signs.
I have no idea. That's a.
I think that's a police question.
That's a police question? Okay.
The answer's no.
The answer's no. And lastly, I would just say, I want to make sure we support the businesses who are struggling, and if they need to advertise their businesses, we need to do everything we can to support them.
I think my general professional opinion is this is a pretty liberal sign code that's in front of you guys. We added things like right now, we just ignore feather signs. So we actually added feather signs into the code because businesses like feather signs, especially certain businesses.
And can you keep those up 24 hours a day?
On private property, because it's a temporary sign.
Okay.
So I guess my opinion is, again, this update is not taking away any provisions in the existing sign code. It's actually adding some, and then it's clarifying a bunch of stuff and making it more legal. And to Councilmember Walsh's point earlier, if we get to a point 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, where we feel like we're getting killed by sign pollution, we'll come back and work on the sign code. We can always do that. It doesn't need to be something we put away for another 15 years.
So can the council have a discussion on the amount of time that a sign could be put up then?
Sure.
If they want?
Sure.
Thank you.
I have a question a little different, but, you know, right now we're having a bunch of signs that are in Federal Way that says store closing.
Yes.
In Fife.
Oh, I didn't read the fine print.
Yeah.
You have to be
But, but my question is, when you put up temporary signs and it's done right with a wood stake usually and 3 things drilled in, and you pound it in, it usually stays there, doesn't fall and flop and become a garbage dump, generally, unless somebody pulls it out like Councilmember Honda was talking about. But you put these signs out, business going out, and they got these little metal things, and they got this thing that goes through there, and they put it in, and they're off to the next one. They're all flopped down, and they're laying around all over the city. Can you regulate what a temporary sign is built out of?
Yes, that's
So, like-
actually in the code.
So, okay, so do we say you have to have a wood stick, and it has to be pounded into the right-of-way, or do we say you can put one of those cheap little metal things
It only
in there
talks
that
about the
goes like?
material of the actual sign.
Yeah.
It doesn't talk about how you actually.
I don't have a
attach it.
problem if somebody puts signs up and that's the Supreme Court ruled it and that's what we gotta do, but can we regulate it like we did chicken coops? You have to have, here's the 3 types of chicken coops you can have in Federal Way that's in our code, or can we have something that says these are the 3 type of signs you can put up?
I think the general answer to that is yes. So the proposed code does have some regulations regarding that, but it's not as specific as what you're proposing. It says they must be constructed of materials durable enough to withstand rain, wind, and normal wear and tear for the anticipated use, is what the code language is. And it also says they must be maintained and kept in a safe condition. So that's not as specific as thou must have a wooden stake,
Well,
2
I
inches,
mean,
whatever it might
I
be.
mean, if we're going to put up with having signs here because the Supreme Court said you have to, which we're going to have to do, we should at least, in my opinion, say what kind of sign you can do, so it doesn't cause the garbage people to pick them up.
Yeah.
But maybe that's too in the weeds. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kent, you said that says that it needs to be in a safe, what was that last verbiage?
Must be maintained and kept in a safe condition. So
Can we-
presumably a sign, for instance, that's blown over and is now blowing into the public right-of-way is not a sign that's maintained and kept in a safe condition, therefore it can get yanked.
Yeah,
for
can it say
instance.
safe and sightly, something like that, or is that too subjective?
And upright.
I don't think it's too legally subjective, but I defer to Keith's policy thoughts on that as well.
So the problem is when we get to words that are kind of somewhat vague and discretionary, that then puts staff in an awkward space. I mean, if y'all want to say that they must be anchored, so this is in a section that's for the right-of-way. So like if you want to say that all temporary signs in the right-of-way need to be anchored by a wooden stake, easy. Let's say that. I can absolutely guarantee you I can tell what a wooden stake is. But if you're going to say it needs to be like sightly or aesthetically pleasing, then now all of a sudden it's my opinion versus the guy who owns the sign who says, wait a second, that looked great there. Everybody was noticing it when they drove by, even though it's in Fife. So like I would rather us stay with kind of rigid words because it's easier for us to actually administer this code if it's clean.
I mean, personally, I'd rather see it say wooden stake. That means people had to go pay money to get the wooden stakes to put the sign in, and they had to think about it. Anyway, Lydia.
Yeah, so with the feather signs,
Yes.
they are allowed.
Yes.
So.
Well, they are allowed in the draft that I've drafted. In the current city code, they're not allowed. Well, they're not mentioned and not really allowed, but people have somewhat been ignoring them, which is part of a problem that we're cleaning up.
Okay, so I was thinking of the daycare, my next door neighbor who had that. So once this gets approved and passed, then she's allowed to have it for 180 days in front of her property
It's
in
a
residential?
residential zone.
So she's
Residential,
a
yeah.
residential zone,
Yeah.
so she would get, oops, wrong direction. She would get one of these smaller signs. Because right now, there's no sign allowed in a residential zoned property. So she would get one of these little guys.
And not the feathers, okay.
They wouldn't get a mural?
Sorry, couldn't
She could have a mural as long as the mural was just a mural and didn't have the name of the daycare or the image of the daycare. That's where it kind of crossed the line.
And the phone
But they
number.
could have a mural and a little sign like this.
Yeah.
And
With the
sorry,
phone
Keith-
number.
Keith, I think
Yes.
feather signs are one of the permitted temporary signs that are allowed on public and private property. I believe regardless of whether it's residential or not.
So it could go in the right of way. So it could go in the right of way?
No, so it could go outside the right-of-way on private property on a residentially zoned property. I believe that's what the
For
code says.
180 days? No, for the,
Period.
But just during business hours?
No, because it's not a A-frame. The ones that are during business hours only are the A-frame signs. I believe the current draft, and you have to confirm if this was intent or not, says feather signs as a temporary sign are allowed on private property subject to certain, it always helps when the attorney reads to the bottom
I was
of the
going to
section.
say, that doesn't sound
The
right.
very last section says, may only be displayed on properties in commercial or mixed-use zones. There you go. So,
most of the day.
that was all the long way of saying it would not be allowed on a residential property.
And I
period.
think because I don't think people want to wake up every morning and see 3 feather signs across the street from them identifying some home business. just an opinion.
I'm going to jump on that one. We went to a bunch of daycares recently, and daycares are probably the number one place I see these feather signs. So if we're yanking that, that means literally half the daycares I've looked at, we're going to have.
They're not allowed now. So they're illegal now.
They
Yeah.
might not be doing it legal now,
Yeah.
but they're definitely not going to be legal next time. So,
Yeah.
we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do because we just talked about really helping those kind of guys out, and now we're just like, phoom. So, conversation for next time, I guess.
So I have a question. So is there a minimum size for a sign, a temporary sign for 180 days, and a maximum size? And why do we have a difference of A-frames, feather signs, and the other signs if they're all advertising businesses or what have you? Why do we treat A-frames differently than other signs? Or do we? It seems like we do if they're only allowed during business hours or whatever.
That was 8 questions now, I've been counting. So your first
Never.
question was, do we have minimums? No, we don't. We have maximums. So there's a maximum size for temporary signs, both on private property and in the right-of-way. So depending on where you put it, there is a maximum for a temporary sign. So that's the first answer. Second
Thank
answer.
you.
Yeah, I can go for about 2 and then I'm done. So, well,
So what is the difference? Why do we?
why do we have a difference for A-frames, feather signs, and just standard temporary on a wooden stake sign?
Correct.
Because the A-frame signs, first off, businesses. So some businesses will choose like an A-frame because they feel like that's the best way to get their message out. It's a personal preference of businesses to have, whether they choose a feather sign or an A-frame sign. Right now, it's their choice. They could do both, or they could just do one or the other. But there's different types. And the reason why we've defined them differently is because they have different dimensional allowances. So you want to put a maximum size on everything, basically. And so whether it's a A-frame or whether it's a feather sign, what the code does is says, here's the maximum. If you choose this temporary sign type, here's the maximum size that can be. And for like a feather sign, it's specific on how it's like stuck in the ground so that it, again, doesn't cause a problem and can stay there for a good amount of time.
So a feather sign is generally larger than an A-frame,
Taller,
taller, correct?
yes.
And it's not restricted to 9 AM to 7 PM.
So we don't allow them in the right-of-way, so they have to be on private property. And so they're typically tied to then the hours of the business.
So then they're to come down at night or when the business is closed? Is that what you're saying?
In theory.
So then you would
No.
expect code
So the
compliance to
A-frames,
drive?
the A-frames are the ones that need to come down when the business closes. The feather signs can just be out for 180 days.
So I'm trying to understand why.
Why what?
I'm trying to understand why we differentiate between the two, because to me, they're both advertising a business.
Because people tend to steal A-frames in the middle of the night and do things with them, whereas nobody's going to steal a feather sign, most likely.
I dare to differ on that. I have
okay.
had feather signs stolen.
You've had illegal feather signs with your business?
I've had illegal feather signs. They were on private property though, in Pavilion 2 though, so I don't know whether that's, but I had,
Tell
I
us
can
more,
personally
Jeff.
attest, I had my illegal feather sign stolen.
Sweet. All right, so I don't know, so council member, I don't maybe have a good answer for your question, other than they're different sign types that have different allowances
I
associated with them.
might suggest that a potential reason for that might be its susceptibility to getting blown around by wind as opposed to a staked sign. That would just be a potential guess about why you might want to regulate them differently. Of course, that's policy, not law, but
I would imagine if I was a business owner and I had an A-frame, I would want to bring it in when I'm not there because I know that they can be stolen. But, heck, anything, all signs can be stolen. So, all right, thank you.
Does anybody want to make changes to this, or do you just want to move it to the agenda meeting as is?
I'm inclined to just have the time instead of 180 days, 120 days. I think 90 days may be a little short, but I think that 120 days could be a compromise.
And just a request from the legal department, I would like to vet any specific day number before we introduce it in. I know 60 is not okay, but I need to make sure that whatever we're proposing is okay. So I'm happy to do that research and be prepared to give you guys the options prior to first reading.
Is everybody okay with 120 days instead of 180?
Yeah, subject to legal.
Subject to legal
vetting it.
saying it's got to be 121? Are we going to put a counter on the sign so we know? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I move to forward the, okay, well, with that, do we need to make that as part of the motion, or you'll just vet it and let us know?
I'd prefer if it weren't part of the motion,
If
it were
we're
instead
not part
just.
of the motion,
Exactly.
okay. I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the December 2nd, 2025 City Council meeting for second reading. Oh, well, hold on.
First reading.
I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on November 18, 2025. I was just too forward thinking there, so.
But
I
you
have a-
didn't say 120 days, did you?
No, he doesn't want it.
You don't want that?
He'll give those.
My preference would be for us to not include it in the motion and for me to
Okay.
just do that research and present options.
Okay.
I have a question on that then.
Okay, well, let's have a second first.
Second.
Okay, now a question.
So when it comes for first reading, we will have your answer.
What's happened is I'll tell Keith what the answer is and he can relay it to you guys as part of the
It's going to be part of
presentation.
the presentation.
So,
And assuming there's not a legal problem, we will tweak the ordinance to be 120 days.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
That was
Keith.
actually a big lift, so thank you.
Okay, now we get to hear item L, progress update, Sound Transit. Mr. Smith, information only.
Good evening. Yes, information only. So I'm here for the progress update on sound transit activities in the city of Federal Way. I am Kent Smith with the Public Works Department. For Federal Link extension, it's mainly focused on a lot of closeout right now. So we've set an official opening date for Federal Link as December 6th, 2025. With that, they are working on preparations for the opening ceremony that will be at the downtown Federal Way station, the new station. The exact details I don't have yet, so once I get some more info, I'll pass it along. Pre-revenue operations have begun, which includes train testing over the entire corridor. So if you pass by the station, you'll see the trains moving as if they would on a normal operating day. So the station new garage, they're still working on testing, and then we're collaborating on the remaining items that are needed to be completed prior to the station opening and beyond. So City and Sound Transit are working together on that. For the operations and maintenance facility south, we're continuing to work on the development agreement. The only real update for this one is that the road closure that was expected to occur for the BPA tower relocation has been pushed to January of 2027 instead of January 2026. So with that, we'll collaborate with BPA and Sound Transit to make sure that everything is in compliance with what they need to do ahead of that closure. And for Tacoma Dome Link extension, no significant updates, but we are continuing to work on advancing the design for the preferred alternative, which includes some preliminary geotech and site investigation work on a lot of city-owned properties in the south portion of the city. And I'll answer any questions.
I have a question. The other day, I walked from the garage to where the Sound Transit is.
Yes.
And I got this idea because I get off the airplane in SeaTac, and they have the little four-row golf cart taking you to the Sound Transit. And I asked the guy who pays for this, and the airport said they did. But I think it's going to be a problem, people walking that don't have disabled stickers that can park, to walk from that garage to get on the train. I just think we're going to hear a whole bunch of,
Very long walk.
I can't do it. And is Sound Transit talking about having a interim way for people who can't walk.
Difficulty.
Some people have difficulty walking. They're not fit enough.
And there's never enough disabled parking.
There isn't.
Never.
Well, I get that, but I'm just saying,
Right.
even people that aren't disabled, I think we're gonna get complaints from somewhere, somebody having to walk from the garage. They're used to walking down to the bus. Now they gotta walk all the way to the Sound Transit. And I don't know what percent of the population is gonna complain, but I think it's a lot bigger than anybody's thought about.
I don't believe they have any plans to implement any sort of shuttle system to get people from the new station to the garage. But I can bring that up with them and see if that's something they consider.
I don't know, maybe I'm the only one thinking about
Especially
it.
at
but I
night.
think-
Most people have talked about that before.
We have talked
Yeah.
about it, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I've tried to get out of them all along is why on earth, I mean, here they have the station clear down right next to 320th, where when it makes that bend, if it would have been up right where it makes the bend, it would have been a lot closer to the garage. And I asked him, and said, oh, that was before my time, I don't know, you know. So,
Well, anyway, it would be a good question to ask somebody.
Yeah, I can certainly propose that.
Okay. Lydia, your turn.
Oh, no, okay, I remember now. The street closure for the BPA trail thing, the slide right before this one.
Yes.
Is that a temporary closure?
Yes, it'd be a temporary closure to allow them to construct new towers. Essentially, the guideway for the light rail that needs to go through that location to get down south requires the towers to go up higher, and doing that, they need to push them into a different location. One of them would actually end up in the existing roadway, so they need to close the road essentially for a whole year in order to
For a
get the
year.
tower built and get everything constructed. But it would be just a temporary.
Okay. And to your point, though, I think we've talked about this a number of times in terms of parking for people with mobility issues, or not, especially when it's dark.
Yeah, that's a good point, like now,
Yeah,
Or rainy,
or raining.
or snow.
like now.
Yeah.
Paul?
My question's kind of along that lines. The other question I have is like, is there any protection really for people waiting for the buses and stuff? Or is it just open? I know you can literally hide underneath of the train itself, but there is no actual protective coverage for anything out there, is there?
Are you speaking for the buses or for the train?
The buses, the train, you got to go up, I'm assuming, to get onto those. But I'm saying for the train, I don't believe there's any kind of coverage or awning or anything in that location, is there?
For all the buses, there are bus shelters at each stop, essentially in the new bus loop, and then at the station, there's coverage. It's not like complete, but there is a roof that covers where you would stand waiting.
So if you had
for the-
20 or 30 people waiting, they'd all be fine, they're not going to get rained on?
Yeah, they are actually pretty big structures for each bus stop, and then they've actually added a couple more on bus stop locations along 320th that were not in the bus loop. So there's additional ones.
Got you. And then my last one is actually a comment. I was talking to a gentleman who works for the fire department. He's worked a lot with Sound Transit and items. And his question to me is, why does Bellevue look so nice and yours looks so plain? So I have a little issue with that. It's like they ran out of money when they got to us and all the beauty stayed up in Bellevue. Pass that on to them. I would have liked to have a little bit nicer look and feel instead of just a commercial, jungle paradise kind of look to ours. It would have been nice to have a little texture, a little character to it. Thank you.
Susan?
Thanks. So I was going to ask about the transmission lines. So in January of 2027 is when they're going to start the work on that?
That's the expected time frame right now, yes.
And the road will be closed for a year? And then the road will reopen in 2028?
So along with raising the lines, in order to do that, they essentially have to put one of the towers in the existing roadway surface. So the city has a project, the City Center Access Project, that would do additional things along with this, but because of that tower relocation, they will need to build a roundabout that is a part of our City Center Access Plan in a new location. So when they raise the towers, that will be its own standalone project by BPA. Sound Transit will then head the project to build a new roundabout immediately after. So essentially, the road will be closed longer than just the tower relocation. I believe at the time it's maybe a year and a half of total closure.
So this is the study session for Wednesday night too, by the way.
Okay.
Is this
Because
entire
that-
topic.
That's going to impact so many people.
It is, absolutely, 100% agree. But the timelines for this BPA and this, a broader update on city center access is the
Okay.
study session.
How many towers do they have to move, in,
I believe it's 2.
just 2?
Yeah. They get 2 brand-new towers and 2 of them go away. So they're not getting more towers, they're just moving and they're taller.
Okay. And then the folks who live in Belmore Park, how are they, has Sound Transit made any deals with anyone? How's that going along, do you know?
As far as acquiring some of their property,
Correct.
yeah, I believe they've already closed on a number of lots and have relocated residents.
So how many lots are they closing, how many lots are they taking altogether?
I'd have to check. I don't have the number off the top of my head.
I think it was 70 something, but I'm not sure. I know the number was changed over a period of time. All right. And so once they do the transmission lines and they get those up higher, then do they start on the line going to the maintenance yard?
After that point, they could. I don't know what their timeline is to when they could actually get in to start construction. Right now, like I said, we're still working on the development agreement. It's not complete yet, so they need to get that finished before they can start work on doing any of those things. But
Do you know when the church needs to be out of that property?
I believe the summer of 26 would be the time frame they're looking to have them out of there.
Wow. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh.
You say that they're still working on the grand opening. Do they have a time, like 9 a.m. or anything like that? I mean, do they have any?
I think the time I've heard tentatively was like 11 a.m. would be the actual ceremony
I think we got an email on that today on the,
I was thinking of saying 11 a.m. would be when the service would start.
That might be right. I'm
And so
not
I figured that
entirely
the time would be earlier, but how much earlier?
They haven't given me full details except kind of like, this is what we're looking to do for the date, but not like an exact
Do they know when they will have the full details?
I can find out.
If you could find out, that'd be great. Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Susan?
oh no, I was just looking for the email. Because the one organization, I think it's the Black Collective, is doing an event there that day. And I think we got an invitation to that today or yesterday. If I find it, I will let you know.
Okay, any other thing anybody wants to bring up? Okay, go ahead.
Just an idea, with Halloween just passing, and this would be just an idea, there was talk about, the gentleman was out here talking about trick or treating and everything. And, there's some of the churches and stuff around that do trunk or treats, where they have the cars and everything, but, they get rained on for some odd reason. October 31st is a very subject day to rain. And this may be a totally not possible at all, but thinking about the idea of having talking to Metro and in the parking facility, having trunk or treat in the parking facility, and coordinating it with them and stuff, and saying, hey, and have signs up the 2 days before, encouraging people to not park on levels 2 and 3 or whatever on Halloween Eve, and possibly having something there. I don't know whether it's a realistic idea or not, but I wanted to toss it out there.
We can certainly share it with Metro. I mean, the community center does a huge trunk or treat event.
Yeah,
so
they do, but it's all, you know, that's the one place where, you know, and the parking garage is the one place where people could get out of the rain. And-
Yeah, no, agreed. I just want to make sure we're not doing two city events like conflict with each other. But
Well, I mean,
I can certainly,
maybe change it,
yeah,
you know.
I can bring it up with John and Metro. And
Yeah, mhm.
Let them look at it.
Okay, our next meeting is December 1, 2025 at 5 PM. Thank you all.
And good thing I'm not running for election right now, or this confession about the illegal sign. I mean, that would probably blow me out of the water right there, so.